The very day we tied the knot, my newlywed wife moved her younger brother straight into our marital home. She didn't just hover over him, waiting on him hand and foot every single second. She actually slept right beside him every single night. At first, I tried to be the understanding husband. My brother-in-law's leg was totally busted, leaving him wheelchair-bound, and since they lost their parents way back when they were kids, I just brushed it off. But here's the massive kicker. We'd been married for 6 whole months, and we still hadn't even consummated our marriage. Just tonight, when I tried to finally get close and intimate with my wife, Evelyn, I was shut down completely once again. We'd just barely shed our clothes when the sharp, sudden crash of shattering glass echoed from the room right next door. Evelyn shoved me away instantly and sprinted next door in an absolute panic. After a whirlwind of chaotic noise, things finally quieted down. But our private moment as husband and wife was completely ruined yet again. 6 incredibly frustrating months of marriage, and I was still sleeping in a cold, lonely bed. My beautiful wife, Evelyn Hayes, clearly cared way more about her precious little brother, Ethan Hayes, than she ever did about her own husband. We barely even existed in the same room. Why? Because Evelyn spent all her waking hours dragging him to endless hospital treatments. Ever since Ethan wrecked his leg, he'd been firmly planted in that stupid wheelchair. Obviously, she desperately wanted to see him walk again. And honestly, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But did that really mean I had to be treated like an invisible ghost in my own house? No matter how insanely patient I tried to be, I was finally hitting my absolute breaking point. I felt utterly ridiculous, completely pathetic, and totally used. How in the world did I let myself sink this incredibly low? Doctor? You really don't look so good. Are you feeling sick? A patient's family member, who'd just walked into the restroom, asked me with genuine concern. I forced a painfully fake smile and mumbled, "Just a little bit. My shift is over soon. I'm just going to head home and get some rest." Honestly, my brain was buzzing so hard, I have absolutely zero idea what else that person even said to me. I practically sprinted out of there, completely overwhelmed by sheer embarrassment. Escaping the restroom, I did the only thing I could possibly do. I ripped off my white coat and bolted home early. The exact second I walked through my front door, Ethan's annoying giggles filled the air. "Really, sis?" I crept quietly toward Ethan's bedroom. The door was cracked wide open. Evelyn was half kneeling on the floor, gazing up at her brother with total devotion. "Really?" she cooed in this incredibly gentle tone. "Ethan, you're just so good to me," she sighed. In response, Ethan gently cupped Evelyn's face and planted a kiss right on her cheek. The smack of his lips was shockingly loud in the quiet house. Watching that messed-up scene unfold, my expression darkened like a thundercloud. These two siblings had absolutely zero boundaries whatsoever. Look, I got that Ethan was a massive clingy weirdo under normal circumstances, but what on earth were they actually doing right now? Right at that moment, Evelyn spotted me lurking in the doorway. She hopped up and strolled toward me, flashing a perfectly innocent smile. "Caleb, you're back. I'll go start on dinner. Be a dear and give Ethan a leg massage for me, okay?" Dropping that absolute bombshell, she casually sashayed off to the kitchen like nothing weird had just happened. She didn't show a single ounce of guilt or shame. It was as if that whole creepy exchange was just another Tuesday to her. I found the whole thing so incredibly laughable I could have screamed. Snapping out of it, I whirled around and glared daggers at Evelyn's back. "Hey," I spat out, "when you agreed to marry me back then, was it literally just so you could rope me into taking care of your brother?" Evelyn's footsteps froze dead in their tracks. She slowly spun around to face me, her eyes stretched wide with pure, unadulterated disbelief. She was totally flustered, practically shaking. Honestly, I couldn't tell if she was trembling because she was guilty as sin or if she just cared about him that insanely much. In just a couple of frantic steps, she closed the distance between us. She stared up at me, her face pale and wildly nervous. "Caleb, how could you even think something like that? If you don't want to massage him, then just don't. I'd never, ever force you. Why on earth would you suddenly say something so awful today? Did somebody at the hospital say something to turn you against us?" The glare I shot back at Evelyn just grew colder and more detached by the second. "Just answer my damn question," I demanded. Evelyn instantly stepped right up and wrapped her arms tightly around my waist, her eyes swimming with desperate tenderness. "No, Caleb, never. It's because I love you. I love you so much, Caleb." I was genuinely stunned by such a fiercely direct confession. I absolutely never expected Evelyn, who was usually so incredibly reserved, to suddenly drop something so totally romantic on me out of nowhere. But I didn't let the sweet words scramble my brain. Why? Because right over Evelyn's shoulder, I saw Ethan glaring from his doorway. There was undeniably a twisted kind of romantic love burning in his eyes. Even though he hid it away in a split second, I caught it loud and clear. There was absolutely something sick and twisted going on between those two siblings. I swallowed my rage and didn't blow up right then, but the very next morning, the second Evelyn got ready to leave, I faked being violently ill and called the hospital for an emergency day off. "Caleb, you're really not going into work today?" Evelyn asked, her brow furrowed in seemingly deep concern. I sprawled out in bed and groaned pitifully. "Yeah, my whole body just feels totally drained. I just want to crash and rest today." "Okay, well, if Ethan needs absolutely anything, please be a good sport and help him out, okay? I'm heading to the office right now," she whispered. She even leaned down and planted a sweet little kiss on my forehead. If this had happened just a few months ago, that tiny, affectionate gesture from my own wife would have literally made my heart explode with absolute happiness. But today, I just felt a sickening crawl of sheer disgust. I wanted to violently shove her away. Still, I bit my tongue and played it completely cool, not showing a single hint of my raging suspicions. I waited, and only after Evelyn's car pulled out of the driveway did I finally drag myself out of the bedroom like a predator stalking its prey. The second I shuffled into the living room, there was Ethan, parked in his stupid wheelchair, glued to the TV. The moment he noticed my totally fake, weak state, he put on a show of concern. "Caleb? Man, are you feeling sick?" I just swaggered over to the couch, lazily flopping down and leaning way back against the cushions. "Oh, you know how it is," I smirked, dripping with hidden meaning. "It's totally your sister's fault for wearing me out all night." I threw the bait out there, quietly watching Ethan's face to see exactly how he'd react. Ethan's eyes instantly blew wide open. He pressed desperately. "What did my sister do to you?" "Tell me. I'll talk to her for you." I let out a soft sigh. A faint, almost invisible smirk of satisfaction crept across my face. Things between a husband and wife aren't exactly something a kid like you would understand. I purposely made my words sound vague and heavily suggestive. The harsh reality? Last night, Evelyn hadn't even let me graze her fingertips. She had passed out cold 3 seconds after hitting the mattress. Ethan bit his lip hard and dropped the subject, but from that moment on, he was completely distracted. Even his favorite TV drama, the one he was usually obsessed with, totally failed to hold his attention. I lay back on the sofa, quietly observing Ethan the entire time. Deep down, I was now 100% certain that there was something deeply twisted going on between these siblings. At the very least, Ethan's feelings for his older sister were far from innocent. By lunchtime, I was way too drained to cook, so I just ordered some takeout. When Evelyn suddenly video called us, Ethan and I were right in the middle of eating. "Why are you two eating takeout? Caleb, did you not cook lunch today?" Evelyn asked, dripping with fake concern. Before I could even open my mouth, Ethan jumped in to cover for me. "Sis, don't blame Caleb. I suddenly really craved takeout, so I made him buy it. If you're going to be mad at anyone, be mad at me." Evelyn's gaze instantly melted into absolute softness. With a sickeningly sweet hint of heartache, she cooed, "Oh, you silly boy. How could I ever be mad at you? I could never spoil you enough." Ethan beamed. "Sis is the absolute best. You're the greatest sister in the whole wide world." As Ethan laid on the sweetness, he burst into a bright, innocent-sounding laugh. I kept my head down and just kept eating, forced to listen to these two siblings exchange such overly intimate, affectionate praises. My grip tightened fiercely around my chopsticks, but the second I lifted my head, a warm, easy smile was perfectly plastered across my face, just like always. I didn't let a single flaw slip. In the past, I had been such a naive fool. I had actually completely failed to see that the bond between this brother and sister was anything but pure. As soon as Ethan ended the video call, he turned and flashed a smug little smile at me. "Caleb, next time you're scared my sister will get mad at you, just pin the blame on me. My sister loves me more than anyone. She would never hold anything against me. I just smiled back and said casually, "Why would your sister ever be mad at me? She's the gentlest woman on earth, especially when it comes to her husband. She cares for me in every single way possible, and she always pays extra special attention to my feelings." The happier and more in love I acted, the more rigid Ethan's face became. Looking right at him, I couldn't stop myself from viciously sneering on the inside. It didn't matter anymore. I had already firmly made up my mind to divorce Evelyn. So, during these final few days together, I was going to make their lives a living hell. Otherwise, what was the point of all the miserable suffering I had endured? Later that evening, when Evelyn finally got home from work, the very first thing she saw was her precious, obedient younger brother and me, bustling around the kitchen. "Sis, you're back. You worked so hard today," Ethan called out. Evelyn offered him a gentle, loving smile. But after changing her shoes and shrugging off her coat, she didn't rush over to Ethan like she usually did. Instead, she made a beeline straight for the kitchen. Ethan turned around, glaring daggers at her back as he pouted. A sharp, jealous spark of raw anger flashed right through his eyes. I obviously knew Evelyn was home, but I played totally dumb and kept chopping vegetables like my life depended on it. Suddenly, a pair of soft arms wrapped tight around my waist. Evelyn hugged me snugly from behind. "Weren't you feeling under the weather? You should have just waited for me to come home and cook," she whispered so gently against my back. Once upon a time, I used to live for these sweet, caring words and those tender, intimate touches between a husband and wife. Honestly, as long as she murmured a few sweet nothings or gave me a warm hug, I would be riding that high of pure happiness for days. But in this exact moment, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't the only one she treated this way. She acted the exact same loving way with her own little brother. After obsessively replaying everything in my head all day, her sick, twisted intentions were finally crystal clear to me. The only reason she had even chosen to marry me back then was because, when Ethan had been hospitalized, I had bent over backwards to take immaculate care of him. To put it bluntly, she was literally just shopping for a free caregiver, a convenient pawn to help shoulder the massive burden of coddling her brother. Sometimes, reality smacks you awake in a single second, and that was exactly the brutal awakening I just had. But standing right there in that kitchen, I didn't let a single ounce of disgust show on my face. Just like always, I teased, all right, stop being so clingy." I knew Ethan was glaring right at her. Evelyn immediately let go and chuckled. Fine. Keep up the hard work. I'll go change my clothes and come right back to help." I flashed a warm smile as I watched her walk out of the dining room. A second later, I caught sight of Ethan in the living room, his eyes totally bloodshot. "Ethan, oh my God, what's wrong?" Evelyn rushed forward in an absolute panic, dropping to one knee right on the carpet. Completely frantic, she started wiping her brother's tears away. Ethan sobbed like a pathetic, heartbroken child. "Sis, I'm totally fine. I just got way too emotional watching my TV drama." Only then did Evelyn let out a massive sigh of relief. She smiled softly and stroked his hair. "You silly boy, everything on TV is totally fake." "Sis, will you ever end up hating me? Will you ever leave me behind? Are you going to love me forever?" Ethan choked out through his sobs. Evelyn gently wiped his tears, her face aching with absolute devotion as she promised, "I will always, always love you. How could I ever possibly hate you or leave you behind? Don't get it twisted. Sis, you're still my number one. I'll love you forever too." Hearing that, Ethan finally cracked a tearful, triumphant smile. I stood frozen in the kitchen, my blood running absolutely cold. How could I have been so blind? I used to look at them and just think, wow, what a tight sibling bond. The twisted reality had never even crossed my mind. I took a deep breath, forcing my racing mind to chill. Swallowing down the furious pounding in my chest, I plastered on a fake smile, mimicking Evelyn's exact posture as I crouched right next to Ethan. "Ethan, you're not alone anymore, buddy. You've got your sister, and you've got me. We are always going to love you." I stared him down with perfect manufactured sincerity, playing the role of the doting older brother. But Ethan just gave me a hollow smirk before whining, "Sis, I'm feeling a little tired. I want to go lie down in bed for a bit. Can you stay with me?" Evelyn nodded instantly, not even hesitating. She literally carried him off to his bedroom. And just like that, she never came back out. I knew exactly what he was doing, spinning every pathetic excuse in the book to keep her locked in there with him all day long. I was completely oblivious before, but once the blinders were off, every sick little detail of our daily life made total sense. Still, knowing the truth didn't stop the agonizing pain in my chest. A bitter, heavy sense of betrayal just kept bleeding through my soul. I gave both of them my whole heart, and this twisted nightmare was my reward? The sheer injustice of it was tearing me apart. Later that night, Evelyn finally crept into our bedroom. I was wide awake, but I rolled over, wrapping my arms around her waist like a needy husband. "Why are you back so late?" I murmured. Evelyn actually looked a bit startled. "Caleb, why aren't you asleep yet?" "I just couldn't sleep without you right beside me," I lied sweetly. She playfully pinched the bridge of my nose. "Ethan watched a scary movie earlier, and he was too spooked to sleep alone. So, I just kept him company for a bit. But hey, I'm here now. Can you sleep peacefully?" I smiled back and gave a soft nod. Like a good little boy, I closed my eyes. Evelyn clicked off the lamp, plunging the room into absolute darkness. The second the lights went out, my smile completely vanished. I lay there wide awake, listening as she drifted off to sleep in seconds. I had been breathing down Ethan's neck all damn day. Exactly when did he have the time to watch a horror movie? The little creep just forced her to stay with him, terrified we might actually act like a real husband and wife at night. Enough was enough. It was time to lay all my cards on the table with Evelyn. A few days later, I booked a VIP room at a fancy restaurant and asked her out for dinner. At first, she flat out refused. But after I practically begged, sweet-talked her, and finally threw a massive fit, she reluctantly caved in. I showed up to the private room dressed to the nines. Catching her stunned expression, I played it cool and asked, "So, what are you craving?" "Dinner is all on me tonight." She was definitely impressed, but true to form, her mind snapped right back to Ethan. Her expression instantly iced over. "Caleb, aren't you just stirring up drama? We are out here eating, while Ethan is stuck at home all by himself. Do you really think this is appropriate?" Not once did she even ask how I was doing. I kept my cool. Lowering my head, I slowly flipped through the menu, studying every single page until she angrily snatched it right out of my hands. "I am talking to you!" she snapped. I slowly raised my head, locking eyes with her. "Today is my birthday." Evelyn froze completely. She literally pulled out her phone just to check the calendar. Her face softened, and the edge left her voice. "Well, then we should just celebrate at home, leaving Ethan alone like this. Is it really that impossible for me to get just one single night alone with my wife?" I cut her off, my voice terrifyingly calm. She looked completely torn. "No, Caleb, stop being so unreasonable. Ethan is already lonely enough staying home by himself most of the time. He literally waits all day just hoping we'll come home after work and spend time with him." I was so furious. A dark laugh actually escaped my lips. "I am being unreasonable? Ethan is only waiting for you to come home and coddle him. And me? In your eyes, I have never been a husband. I am just a glorified babysitter, a pathetic servant. Caleb, how could you even say that? Haven't I treated you well? So what if I just forgot your birthday today? Does that really give you the right to be so incredibly harsh?" Evelyn shot back, flaring up with defensive anger. I suddenly shot up from my chair, bracing both hands heavily on the table. "Evelyn, you truly do not have a shred of conscience." That pissed her off even more. "You are the one acting crazy," she yelled. I turned my back on her, my voice turning to absolute ice. "Let's get a divorce." As I walked out the door, she just sneered at my back. "A divorce? If you walk out on me, who is going to pay for your cushy lifestyle? Who else is going to let you blow through cash like this? Who exactly are you trying to scare?" She let out an arrogant scoff, adjusted her collar, and confidently strutted out of the restaurant. She bolted back home like a coward. Me? I was totally done playing the dutiful husband. That night, I didn't even bother going back to that toxic house. Instead, I booked myself a massive suite at a 5-star hotel and called my best buddy over to keep my sanity intact. The two of us even hit up the billiards room, shooting pool for a while just to blow off some serious steam. "Wait, you seriously want to divorce Evelyn?" Ryan practically shot up from his chair, completely blindsided. "Isn't she basically perfect? She's drop-dead gorgeous and totally loaded, man." I took a sip of my drink and calmly replied, "Bro, what she wanted wasn't a husband. She just wanted a free, live-in caregiver. The only thing she ever liked about me was my medical degree. She just needed a convenient doctor to wipe her precious brother's ass. Hearing that, Ryan's face twisted into a painfully complicated expression. Trying to play peacemaker, he awkwardly patted my shoulder. Hey, maybe you're just being a little oversensitive? Her brother is sick, man. He really does need round-the-clock care. I stared at him dead in the eye and said flatly, Ryan, we've been married for ages, and we still haven't even consummated the marriage. Every single time, her brother magically ruins it. Ryan's jaw hit the floor. His entire worldview was practically shattering in real time. Dude, no way. I never in a million years would have guessed Evelyn could pull some twisted garbage like that. It gets worse. The other day, I caught her precious brother holding her face and kissing her dead on the lips. I continued ruthlessly. Ryan was hit so incredibly hard by those 3 bombshells that he just sat there, totally paralyzed. After what felt like an eternity of agonizing silence, he finally slammed his fist down and said firmly, Okay, yeah, this marriage absolutely has to end, right now, and end it would. For several straight days, no matter how desperately Evelyn tried to blow up my phone, I completely ghosted her. Eventually, the pampered princess started losing her patience. She shot me a highly arrogant text on WhatsApp. Caleb, don't push your luck. You are rejecting my kindness only to invite punishment. I am generously giving you a way out here, so you better take it. Oh, I took a way out, all right. I instantly had a freshly drafted divorce agreement overnighted straight to her door. But the gaslighting wasn't over. The very next morning, Evelyn actually showed up at the hospital where I worked. There she was, clutching a massive bouquet of bright red roses, standing right at the main entrance of the inpatient building like a bad rom-com cliché. The second she locked eyes with me, she plastered on a fake, sickeningly sweet smile and strutted right over. Using that soft, coaxing voice of hers, she purred, Oh, Caleb, honey, I was wrong. Please, don't be so mad at me anymore. I barely even gave her a passing glance. Oh? And exactly what did you do wrong? Just everything, okay? Come on, be the bigger person and just let it all go, Caleb. Evelyn whined, that fake, desperate smile still totally glued to her face. My expression just grew colder and colder by the second. I knew right then and there that this delusional woman still had absolutely zero clue what the real, disgusting problem between us actually was. So, I decided to lay it out plain and simple for her thick skull. Look, if you genuinely want me to forgive you, fine. We pack up, move out, and live somewhere far away from him. You can just work a little harder and commute back and forth whenever you want to play nurse for your darling Ethan. Instantly, that pathetic little smile vanished entirely from Evelyn's face. Her brows knitted together in pure frustration. Caleb, are you serious right now? Can you please stop acting like a stubborn child? You are Ethan's brother-in-law. For crying out loud. Isn't it only right for you, a doctor, to take care of him? Where in the world did all your kindness and empathy go? I just stared at her, ice-cold and completely unshaken by her guilt trip. If you refuse to set basic boundaries, then just sign the damn papers. Let's just end this mess and part on good terms. Evelyn's mask completely shattered. She violently slammed the expensive roses onto the concrete floor and glared at me with absolute unhinged fury. Why the hell should I sign anything? She shrieked. I am warning you right now, Caleb. If you force this divorce, do not even think about getting a single red cent of my money. I scoffed. Fine by me. Since my extremely fair agreement isn't good enough for your highness, you go ahead, draft a better one, and mail it to my lawyer. Because honestly, I never want to see your face again. Dropping that final bomb, I stepped right past her crushed roses and headed for the door. But Evelyn desperately latched onto my sleeve like a leech. Wait, Caleb, you're doing this because you have some other woman out there, don't you? That wild, hypocritical accusation? That was the exact moment my normally rock-steady temper completely snapped. I violently ripped my arm out of her grip. I glared at her, my eyes practically shooting daggers. Evelyn, do you honestly believe your sick little secret with Ethan could stay hidden from me forever? Do you really think I'm totally blind? And after everything I saw, you have the sheer audacity to try and flip the script on me? Evelyn recoiled, looking genuinely, horrifyingly shocked. See, Caleb, what on earth are you even talking about? What could possibly be wrong with me and Ethan? We are literally biological siblings. I let out a harsh, mocking sneer. Oh, so what if you share DNA? Does sharing blood suddenly mean you two get a free pass to completely ignore all basic human boundaries? Why don't you take a long, hard look at every single disgustingly intimate detail of how you two siblings interact? Tell me to my face, is it really that innocent? With that brutal reality check delivered, I shoved her away. I completely ignored Evelyn as she threw a childish tantrum, literally stomping her expensive heels in panic and frustration, and I never once looked back. I couldn't even focus properly for the rest of my shift, mainly because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with Evelyn's desperate, backpedaling texts. She suddenly claimed she was totally willing to compromise, saying we could buy a brand new house in the exact same neighborhood, so she could still conveniently run over and coddle Ethan whenever she wanted. She even desperately swore that I would never, ever have to play doctor for her brother again, promising she would personally handle absolutely everything regarding his care from now on. She typed out pathetic excuses, claiming she had just been too stressed and hadn't thought things through carefully enough before. Caleb, please! Our parents passed away when we were so young. Ethan is literally my only family left. The bond between us has just always been incredibly strong. I swear you've completely misunderstood the situation. But as for those boundaries you mentioned, I promise I'll pay strict attention to them from now on. Ethan and I were just so used to playfully joking around like that. But I'll change, I swear. I absolutely will never, ever let it happen again. Oh, Caleb, please don't be mad at me anymore, okay? Right after your shift, I'll come pick you up. Let's just go home, please? Evelyn ruthlessly bombarded me with walls of pathetic text exactly like that. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a single reply all damn day. That is, not until the evening rolled around, and Evelyn suddenly ambushed me at the hospital entrance yet again. Only this time, she wasn't armed with cheap roses. Instead, she was desperately clutching a massive shopping bag from a ridiculously expensive luxury brand, hoping she could just buy my silence. She walked up to me with a bright, picture-perfect smile. Caleb, this is for you. I lowered my head, glanced at the gift, and froze. I was completely stunned. Why are you? Why on earth did you buy such an impossibly expensive bag? I stammered, caught off guard. I know you've been eyeing this one. That day we passed by the store window. You couldn't take your eyes off it, Evelyn said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Evelyn's flawless smile never wavered. Before I could even finish my sentence, she lunged forward and pulled me into a tight hug. You silly guy. Anything you want, I'll buy for you, even if I have to sell everything I own to get it. I really, truly love you. Caleb, I will never, ever agree to a divorce. Hearing those words, my blood ran cold. It seemed breaking free from this nightmare wasn't going to be easy after all. Evelyn would never let me go willingly. If I actually wanted a divorce, my only option was to take her to court and sue. And to pull that off, I needed to build an ironclad case and gather evidence first. I quietly shifted my weight, pulling away from her embrace. In the end, I forced a neutral tone and said, I don't want to go back and live in that house. Fine. Then I'll buy us a new place as soon as possible, okay? She compromised. For the next 2 days, you'll just have to tough it out a little. Stay at a nice hotel for now. As she spoke, Evelyn pulled out her phone and transferred $20,000 right into my account. I frowned, completely put off. What are you doing? I have my own money. It's perfectly normal for a husband to spend his wife's money. Please, stay in a high-end hotel these next 2 days. Don't let yourself suffer out there, Evelyn said, forcing a pained, heartbroken expression. She gently reached out and smoothed my hair. Her movements were almost sickeningly tender. I kept my head down and gave a faint, reluctant nod. Okay. Her words sounded like poetry, but the truth was, the greatest suffering in my life had been handed to me by this exact woman. Will you eat with me? I asked, testing the waters. Evelyn glanced at the time, then put on an apologetic face. Ethan is still at home waiting for me to eat with him. Why don't you just come back with me? I'll cook a big meal for both of you myself. I wasn't surprised in the slightest. Honestly, I hadn't expected her to choose me over him in the first place. I gave her a cold, empty stare. No need. I'll eat at the hotel. All right then, I'll drive you. From that night onward, I started replying to Evelyn's text messages again. I just kept my answers short and didn't give her much to work with. She, on the other hand, was playing the role of the enthusiastic wife to perfection, reporting every tiny detail of her day and whatever had just happened. She was acting especially devoted, constantly sending me expensive gifts and setting up little surprises. At night, she would even blow up my phone with video calls. During those calls, I noticed Evelyn was sleeping completely alone in our master bedroom. Every single night, she stayed on the line with me until I fell asleep, totally mirroring our honeymoon phase. She was bending over backward to make me feel safe and secure. But the harder she tried to play the perfect wife, the more incredibly suspicious I became. Why was it that the second I was out of the picture, Ethan suddenly stopped clinging to Evelyn like a lost puppy? It dawned on me. Everything Ethan did before was just to antagonize me, his brother-in-law, to make my life a living hell. But the real kicker? This afternoon, Ethan randomly showed up at the hospital to see me. He rolled up in his fancy electric wheelchair, looking up at me with those wide, obedient eyes. "Caleb, I want to talk to you," he said. I raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Sure." Honestly, I was morbidly curious about what kind of nonsense he was going to spew this time. The two of us made our way out to the quiet hospital garden. The whole way there, Ethan didn't ask for a single ounce of help. He navigated that electric wheelchair all by himself with absolute, practiced ease. I always knew it. Ethan was nowhere near as weak, fragile, or helpless as he pretended to be. His whole pathetic act was just a show designed entirely for Evelyn's eyes. And man, he was a good actor. A dangerously convincing one. Nobody could ever expose his little game. Let's talk right here. I stopped beneath a towering willow tree and stared him down, keeping my cool. Ethan smiled, a soft, perfectly innocent little smirk. "Caleb, why haven't you been coming home lately? Did you and my sister get into a fight?" I just let out a non-committal grunt, refusing to explain myself. I was waiting for him to drop the real bait. "Oh, wait, I know. You two fought over me, didn't you? Gosh, I just feel terrible about it. I really don't want my sister to be upset because of me." Ethan lowered his eyes, playing the sensible, obedient little brother to a T. Even so, I kept my mouth shut. I just stood there, quietly analyzing him. He really knew how to spin a pretty narrative, but if he genuinely cared about Evelyn's feelings, he wouldn't have pulled half the toxic stunts he did. I knew the truth. Ethan understood exactly what he was doing. Every single move he made was painfully calculated and entirely on purpose. Seeing that I wasn't taking the bait, a dark, venomous glint flashed in Ethan's eyes. He leaned in and whispered, "Do you want to know a little secret, Caleb? Actually, my sister and I aren't biological siblings." "What?" My eyes went wide, my pupils shrinking in pure shock. Seeing me finally lose my composure, Ethan looked utterly thrilled. But on the surface, he kept up that sickening smile and chuckled. "Wow, so she really never told you about us? Looks like she doesn't love you all that much after all, Caleb. I mean, if she really cared, why would she hide such a massive secret from her own husband?" In that split second, every single memory of my life with Evelyn flashed rapidly before my eyes like a twisted movie reel. "Dr. Cole, you've been so incredibly good to me and my brother. You are absolutely the best person I have ever met in this world. I am completely crazy about you. Caleb, marry me. I will let you spend every last dime I have. The house will be in your name only, and everything I own will be yours. I love you, Caleb. I swear I will cherish you for the rest of my life." Those were her exact words. But from the very beginning to the bitter end, Evelyn had played me for an absolute fool. She lied right to my face, and I had willingly walked into the sweet, toxic trap she spun for me. Seeing the raw hurt in my bloodshot eyes, Ethan just smirked, his voice sickeningly calm and slow. "Caleb, buddy, maybe my sister was just scared you would overthink things if you knew the real truth. After all, she straight up told me that the person she loves most in this entire world will always be me. You? You are just a permanent runner-up." My mind slowly snapped back to reality. My gaze locked onto Ethan's soft, innocent-looking, pathetic face. Then, cool as ice, I dropped a bomb. "Your sister is already setting up a brand new house. Did you know about that?" Ethan instantly froze. That smug little smirk wiped right off his face. I leaned in and drawled, "She said you are her only real family left in this world, and since you are crippled, odds are pretty high that no one will ever want to marry you. So, she is going to babysit you for the rest of your miserable life. But get this straight, that is all it is. Just charity work. Beneath his sleeves, I saw Ethan's hands trembling as they clenched into tight, furious fists. Refusing to back down, he hissed, "She is lying to you. Do you even know the real reason she married you back then? It is because you are a doctor. You are a professional at taking care of sick people. With you here as my personal nurse, she feels way better when she leaves my side. Are you really that blind? She is obsessing over me every single second of the day. Even if I was the most oblivious guy on earth, I had sniffed out this twisted dynamic ages ago. My heart had already turned to solid ice. But there was no way in hell I was giving Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me break. I sure hope your dear sister agrees with every little word you just spat out." As I said it, I casually slid my phone right out of my pocket. The screen was lit up, proudly displaying a running audio recording. This time, the color drained completely from Ethan's face. The innocent little brother act dropped in a heartbeat. He glared at me with absolute, murderous rage. "You are a piece of trash, Caleb." I tilted my head, playing dumb. "Now, how am I the bad guy here? I was just so worried I might forget your touching words, so I hit record. I plan on listening to it on repeat later. That is all." Ethan panicked. "What are you trying to pull, Caleb? Delete that recording right now." He lunged, trying to snatch the phone right out of my hand. I easily sidestepped him and casually tucked the phone safely away. Then I looked down at him and said flatly, "I finally get the whole sick, twisted dynamic between you and your sister. We are done here. See ya." As I spun around to walk away, a dark smirk tugged at the corners of my mouth. Just when I needed a weapon, this idiot handed me a loaded gun. Man, my luck was finally turning around, but let's be real. A quick audio recording of Ethan was not going to be enough to nail them. I still had to stay sharp and hunt down rock-solid evidence. So, I decided to play it cool and avoid stirring the pot between the two freaks for now. I would just sit back in the shadows, quietly watching and biding my time. But Ethan must have been sweating bullets. Ever since our little showdown at the hospital, he went into overdrive, desperately clinging to Evelyn, sucking up every last drop of her free time. Right around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Evelyn. "Caleb, are you awake?" I had the next day off, so I happened to be wide awake. I shot back a quick, dry text. Almost instantly, Evelyn hit me with a video call. On the screen, Evelyn put on her best puppy dog, apologetic face. Oh, Caleb. Ethan was throwing up and had a terrible stomach bug all day. He was just absolutely miserable. He finally felt a tiny bit better and dozed off. "I am so sorry I made you wait up this late for me." I forced the corners of my mouth up. It looked like a smile, but my eyes were dead cold. "Hey, no worries. It is super late anyway. You should get some rest. You have a long shift at work tomorrow." Maybe my fake understanding act made Evelyn feel a sudden rush of guilt. Her voice got sickeningly sweet and gentle. "You know, the other day I was walking past a boutique and saw a suit that screamed your name. They only had one left, but I went ahead and ordered it for you. It should be delivered in a couple of days. Thank you for being such an understanding husband." Joke's on her. I had not stayed up waiting for her call at all, and I did not give a single damn about her little guilt trip gifts, because I knew the harsh reality. In my dear wife's heart, Ethan would always be number one. If I let myself fall for her cheap breadcrumbs of affection again, I would be doomed to live out the rest of my days in endless, pathetic waiting and sheer agony. It would be a life fueled by nothing but suffocating rage. Thank God I finally woke up from the nightmare. It was not too late to cut my losses and burn this marriage down. The very next day, I was grinding away at work when a sharp, stabbing pain hit my lower right side. At first, it was just a dull ache, but within hours, it ramped up into pure torture. It hurt so intensely that cold sweat drenched my scrubs, and I literally could not even stand up straight. Being a doctor myself, it did not take a genius to diagnose it. I was dealing with a nasty case of acute appendicitis. Seeing me completely doubled over in agony, my coworker took it upon himself to call my wife. Back when Evelyn was obsessively pursuing me, she had gotten the numbers of everyone in my office, bribing them with treats just to keep tabs on me. So, the second I collapsed, their first instinct was to dial her number. By the time she rushed in, I was waiting on my x-ray results. I was slumped alone on a cold hospital bench, pale as a ghost, looking like a total wreck. "Caleb, what did the doctor say? Why on earth didn't you call me when you were hurting this much?" Evelyn stepped right up and pulled me into a gentle hug. Her hands felt incredibly warm. I could feel that heat seeping right through my shirt. Honestly, seeing the genuine panic in her eyes, it actually melted my heart a little. Talk is cheap, but being there when it counts is everything. Right then, I just desperately needed my family by my side. And to her credit, Evelyn didn't leave me for a second. She sprinted around grabbing my test results, hunted down hot water, and even stripped off her own coat to drape it over my shivering shoulders. I took it all in, but the searing pain in my gut didn't leave much room for deep thoughts. Soon enough, the doctor handed over a surgical consent form. It needed a family member's signature. Since she was right there, Evelyn signed it without hesitation. But just as they were wheeling me toward the operating room, her phone buzzed. We were close enough that I could clearly hear the frantic voice pouring out of the speaker. It was Ethan. "Sis, I burned myself. It hurts so bad, what do I do? I'm terrified." The guy was practically sobbing into the mic. I couldn't exactly pretend I was deaf. My eyebrows instantly shot up in a tight frown. Seriously, what are the odds? Ethan always had a knack for popping up at the absolute worst moments to ruin my life. I knew the drill. The second he turned on the waterworks, she was going to lose her mind over him all over again. Sure enough, right on cue, all her calm, collected wife energy vanished into thin air. "Ethan, stay calm. I'm on my way." She hung up and looked at me with frantic eyes. "Caleb, can you handle going into surgery alone?" Ethan burned himself. "I have to go check on him." Before she could even finish her excuse, I cut her off. My voice was weak, but desperate. "Evelyn, I need you. I feel like I'm dying. I can call my coworkers to handle his burn. They are literally medical professionals." As the words left my mouth, tears pricked my eyes. I had spent years playing the tough, independent husband. Evelyn loved to brag about how low maintenance I was. Yeah, she praised me right before casually tossing me aside whenever it suited her. But this time, I was done backing down. Yet without missing a beat, she fired back. "How is that supposed to work? Ethan is scared. I have to be there." She gripped my shoulders, trying to sound soothing. "Just relax. I promise I'll be right here the second you are out of surgery. Be a good boy. Go on." I grabbed my stomach, my face twisting in absolute agony. "But I need you right now, Evelyn." She stared at my pain-twisted face, hesitating for a split second. Then, a wall of pure ice slammed down over her expression. "Caleb, you are acting incredibly childish. You never used to be this needy. What the hell happened to you?" A broken, pathetic laugh escaped my lips as hot tears finally spilled down my cheeks. "I guess I've always been this childish. Whatever. If you walk out that door right now, we are getting a divorce." Evelyn stared at me like I had grown two heads, her voice dripping with venom. "Caleb, I am fresh out of patience. You are completely impossible." And with that, she spun on her heel and marched away. Over her shoulder, she spat, "Fine, let's divorce. But hear me now, Caleb, if we are done, do not expect to get a single red cent." I slowly turned my head, watching her figure disappear down the hall. My face was completely numb. I lifted a shaking hand to wipe my bloodshot eyes. It felt like my heart had just flatlined, leaving behind nothing but a hollow, empty crater. One hand gripping my chest and the other clutching my agonizing stomach, I swayed on my feet, dragging my frail body toward the operating room all on my own. The surgery itself went off without a hitch. But when they wheeled me out of the haze, I didn't see my wife. Instead, a very unexpected, familiar face stepped up. Grace gently squeezed my shoulder. "Don't be scared, I've got you." Instantly, my eyes welled up with fresh tears. A tidal wave of complicated emotions crashed into my chest, but I fought like hell to push it all back down. Growing up, Grace and I basically despised each other. She was just too perfect, too successful, almost like she wasn't even human. I was meant to be an only child, but when I was 8, my parents brought her home to raise as a favor for an old friend. She was already 13 back then. From the moment she stepped through our front door, my parents constantly compared us, breeding a bitter resentment deep in my bones. I used to be so rebellious, constantly pushing away the one person who actually cared about me, Grace. But when my parents suddenly passed away, my whole world shattered. Grace was the only family I had left in this world. As I settled into my hospital bed, she pulled up a chair, her eyes full of worry. "Does it hurt?" she whispered. "Yeah, it hurts," I grumbled, wincing as a sharp spike of pain shot through my body, forcing my brows tightly together. She squeezed my hand. "The hardest part is already over, Caleb. I promise you, things are only going to get better and better from now on." I froze for a second. "Will they?" I mumbled. "Will things really get better?" Then I managed a bitter, broken laugh. "God, I hope so." And just like I figured, my so-called wife, Evelyn, never showed her face again. I'd killed my phone the second they wheeled me into the OR, and honestly, I hadn't bothered turning it back on since. Evelyn couldn't reach me, sure. But let's be real, she didn't try every possible way to contact me, and she sure as hell didn't rush to the hospital to stay by my side. The masks were completely off now. Our marriage was a joke, and frankly, I was finally done caring. I spilled everything to Grace. Every single messy, twisted detail about what had happened between Evelyn and me. I knew Grace was absolutely furious, but looking at her face, she was a total stone wall. I just kept venting, laying out the entire sick triangle between the three of us. I was so caught up in my own rant that I totally missed her fists shaking at her sides. "Don't stress about the divorce paperwork. I'll go talk to Evelyn for you." Grace stood by the window, her back to me, her voice chillingly calm. She played it so cool that I didn't even realize she was ready to burn the whole place to the ground for me in that moment. I just stared at her back and whispered, "Thank you, Grace, for everything." With her taking the wheel, cutting ties with Evelyn was a breeze. Evelyn actually tried to visit me a few times during this mess, but Grace shut her down at the door every single time. Meanwhile, I handed in my resignation. I was packing up my life, ready to ditch this toxic city and head out to the capital with Grace to rebuild my career and get a totally fresh start. The day I finally got a clean bill of health, I treated my old work buddies to a farewell dinner. But karma has a sick sense of humor. It just so happened to be Evelyn's birthday, and guess who booked a table at the exact same restaurant? I was walking down the hall when I glanced into an open private room. I saw the party decorations, and right there in the middle, Ethan sitting in his damn wheelchair. That's when it clicked. Oh, right. Today is my soon-to-be ex-wife's big day. I saw a bunch of Evelyn's female friends swarming Ethan, totally fawning over him and treating him like he was the real man behind her success. "Oh, Ethan, you're just so charming," one of them giggled. "No wonder Evelyn sprints home the second work ends every day. Seriously, even when she's chatting with us, she can hardly go 3 sentences without bringing you up. You really are the person she keeps closest to her heart." I actually found this little circus pretty amusing, so I just stopped at the doorway to watch. None of these girls seemed to realize that Evelyn and Ethan were actually brother and sister. They were enthusiastically shipping them. And Ethan? He just blushed and smiled like a bashful schoolboy. "She really does treat me especially well," he said softly. The creep had zero intention of explaining their real relationship. He was completely eating up the misunderstanding. I lowered my eyes, a dark, mocking smirk creeping across my face. I didn't stick around for the rest of the freak show. I just walked back to my own room like I hadn't seen a thing. Hours later, after the dinner wrapped up and I got back to my apartment, I realized I was an idiot. I'd left my bag back in the private room. So, I hauled myself all the way back to the restaurant. It was late. Most of the guests were gone, and the place was practically dead, silent. But as I crept past Evelyn's private room, I heard hushed voices. Through the tiny gap in the door, I got a front row seat to what was happening inside. Ethan was parked on the sofa, clutching Evelyn tightly against his chest. "I'll never let you go, not in this lifetime," he whispered. My eyes nearly popped out of my skull, because right then and there, the two of them actually started making out. Watching them lock lips was a complete and utter shock to the system. I thought my eyes were going to bleed. My stomach flipped, hands shaking like crazy. I whipped out my phone, opened the camera, and caught the whole sick thing on video. By the time I stumbled back through my front door, I was shivering uncontrollably. Cold chills were ripping right through my spine. Grace stepped out of the study and took one look at my ghost-white face. Her relaxed walk instantly turned into a sprint. She rushed over, dropping to a crouch beside me. "Caleb? Hey, what's wrong? What happened?" she asked. She sounded so gentle, like she was terrified of pushing me over the edge. I just grabbed my head and curled into a tight ball on the corner of the couch. I... I just ran into Evelyn and Ethan, I stammered, my voice cracking hard, at the restaurant. Grace's scowl was instant. Did those two team up to mess with you again? I didn't even have the words. I just shook my head. Instead of talking, I pulled my phone out of my bag and shoved the video I had just recorded right into her hands. She watched the whole twisted clip. Oddly enough, her tense shoulders actually relaxed a bit. She just patted me on the back and muttered, "Well, they were never related by blood to begin with. Honestly, Caleb, this sick little show was bound to happen sooner or later. Look, Caleb, if you're really walking away from this marriage, you need to scrub Evelyn from your mind." I knew Grace was right, but the rage burning inside me was hard to ignore. My feelings were a tangled mess of betrayal and fury. My heart had supposedly turned to ice when it came to Evelyn, but catching her in that twisted scene still felt like a jagged blade straight to the chest. But honestly, the biggest thing I felt was pure, burning humiliation. Looking back at the old me, I couldn't help but wonder how on earth had I been such a colossal idiot. To get played like a fiddle by those two sick siblings? Just send me the video, I muttered, my voice tight. Trust me, this nightmare between you two is going to end real soon. Grace's voice was incredibly soft as she ran a soothing hand through my hair, trying to calm my racing mind. Go take a hot shower and get some rest. Tomorrow is a brand new battlefield. I just nodded, letting her words wash over me. Pushing myself up, I dragged my exhausted body toward my bedroom. But right at the doorway, I stopped dead in my tracks and glanced back at Grace. Swallowing my pride, I forced the words out. Hey, about how I acted before? I really am sorry. Hearing that, Grace, who usually had a poker face made of pure steel, actually froze for a second. A soft sigh escaped her lips. You silly kid. Why would I ever hold a grudge against a stubborn brat like you? I bit my lip, feeling a sudden wave of genuine warmth. Finally, a real, unforced smile broke across my face. Thank you. And just like that, the invisible weight on my shoulders lifted, making my steps toward the bedroom feel infinitely lighter. Grace, though, didn't move. She stood rooted to the spot, staring down the dark hallway long after I had disappeared, her eyes swirling with an incredibly deep, unreadable emotion. Meanwhile, when Evelyn finally snapped awake from her massive hangover, the muffled sound of voices drifting in from the hallway instantly caught her attention. Panic setting in, she leaped out of bed and sprinted out barefoot. "Ethan! Is Caleb back?" she gasped. Out in the living room, Ethan was slumped in his wheelchair. His welcoming smirk instantly shattered. Forcing a couple of awkward, dry chuckles, he muttered, Sis? It's just Grace. She says she needs to have a little chat with you." The second Evelyn locked eyes with Grace. Her face twisted into a fierce scowl. Her vibe turned completely toxic. "I am absolutely not agreeing to this divorce," she snapped like a spoiled princess. "You tell Caleb that if he wants out, he needs to man up and say it to my face." Grace just scoffed, her tone dripping with ice. "Oh, honey, do you honestly think you still get to call the shots here? The mere fact that Caleb hasn't dragged your name through a nasty lawsuit is him showing you epic amounts of mercy." Hearing this, Ethan shot Grace a desperate look, his eyes bloodshot and pleading. "Grace, please, this is entirely my fault. I was an idiot for letting slip what was going on between me and my sister. Look, blood-related or not, we are always going to be family. You have to explain that to Caleb for us. My sister is truly desperately in love with him." Grace didn't even flinch. She stared deadpan at the pathetic guy in the wheelchair. "Let me get this straight. You are sincerely hoping that Evelyn and Caleb stay happily married, right?" Ethan completely froze. His jaw clenched so hard you could practically hear his teeth grinding. "Well, yeah, of course. I just want my sister to be happy. And she really does care about him." Smooth as ever, Grace stood up and casually brushed off her clothes. "All right then. I'll head back and try to talk some sense into Caleb. I'll beg him to give Evelyn one more shot." She spun on her heel, making a show of heading for the door. Right on cue, Ethan's panicked voice echoed behind her. "Wait! Grace, hold on a second." Grace had seen this trap coming from a mile away. A condescending smirk flashed across her face. But by the time she turned back around, her expression was perfectly blank and completely unbothered. "Did you forget something?" she asked. Ethan looked like he was having a total meltdown. He was squeezing his phone so intensely, His knuckles were white enough to crack the screen. If Caleb is really dead set against it, Grace, please don't push him. About Caleb, I've given this a whole lot of deep thought. My sister and I just can't be that ridiculously selfish. It's totally wrong to force Caleb into a corner he wants no part of. But Evelyn wasn't having it. "Shut up! I am never letting go!" she shrieked. "I can fix this. I will spend the rest of my damn life making it up to Caleb if I have to." Ethan stared at his sister in pure, unadulterated shock, a vicious wave of jealousy twisting his heart like a jagged knife. Was she actually catching real feelings for Caleb now? How the hell was that even possible after everything they'd done? Grace fixed Evelyn with a dead-eyed stare. "You cry wolf every single time, but you've done nothing but trash Caleb's trust over and over. Your little promises are completely bankrupt." For once, Evelyn was utterly paralyzed, her mouth opening and closing without a single sound coming out. The ugly truth was hitting her hard. Just days ago, right when Caleb was at his lowest, she had ditched him at the hospital without a second thought and hadn't even bothered checking in on him. She had been so cocky, convinced Caleb was only waving the divorce card around to scare her into playing the devoted wife. In her twisted mind, she thought she could just buy him off with some cheap gifts, whisper a few sweet nothings, and smoothly sweep the whole mess under the rug. What she absolutely hadn't factored into her master plan was the earth-shattering revelation that she and Ethan didn't share a single drop of the same blood. And the real kicker? Caleb had somehow managed to unearth this dirty little secret before she even had a clue. The moment Grace hit play on that damning audio recording of Ethan, her entire reality shattered. Finding out she wasn't her parents' real daughter, but just an adopted stand-in, it completely broke her. Ever since that bomb dropped, she had tried to blow up Caleb's phone, but he had completely blocked her out. The guy was basically a ghost. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn felt a cold, suffocating terror creeping in. The undeniable truth was sinking in. She was losing Caleb, piece by piece. But how could she just let her safety net vanish? A toxic silence swallowed the room as Ethan frantically darted his eyes between Grace's icy glare and Evelyn's crumbling facade. After agonizing over it, Ethan finally sighed and said, "Look, sis, since Caleb is dead set on walking away, why not just sign the damn divorce papers? If you're that obsessed with him, you can always win him back later." "I've got your back." "No way in hell." Evelyn spat, her eyes bloodshot and unhinged. She glared at Ethan, then snapped her venomous gaze toward Grace. "I will never agree to this divorce. Absolutely not." But before Evelyn could finish her little tantrum, Grace simply tapped play on her phone. The video playing on the screen? A very compromising clip of Evelyn and Ethan. Evelyn froze, the color draining from her face. She stared at Ethan in pure horror. How did this happen?" Ethan put on a sickeningly innocent face. "Sis, you were completely wasted last night. You must have thought I was Caleb." He dramatically covered his face, playing the absolute victim. Panicking, Evelyn stammered, I was drunk. I swear I had no idea what I was doing." Grace rolled her eyes, exhausted by this twisted, fake sibling soap opera. She cut in with ice in her voice. "You have exactly 3 days. If that divorce agreement isn't signed by then, I'm taking this to court. And I'm pretty sure you don't want your precious company seeing this sick little home movie, right?" Evelyn's breath hitched, terror flashing in her eyes. She had clawed her way to the top of the corporate ladder. A scandal like this would ruin her forever. Defeated, she collapsed into the sofa, looking totally shattered. It was over. She had officially lost. Fast forward to the morning Caleb finally left. The sky was heavy and gray, perfectly matching his battered spirit. But the moment Grace handed him that stamped divorce certificate, he clutched it to his chest like a lifeline. Years of suffocating pain finally broke. His voice shook. "Grace, thank you. Seriously, thank you." Seeing her little brother fighting back tears, Grace softly pulled him into a warm hug. "It's over, Caleb. You get a clean slate now. A brand new life." Choked up, Caleb couldn't even speak. He just nodded, endlessly. Soon, their plane was speeding down the runway. Caleb stared out the window. Sunlight suddenly pierced through the heavy storm clouds, washing the cabin in a brilliant golden glow. A genuine smile finally touched his lips. He whispered to himself, "Yeah, it really is over. The storm is finally gone." Meanwhile, back in the city, Evelyn sprang up from her desk during a frantic phone call. Wait, what? Say that again? Her friend sighed through the speaker. Word as Caleb left Brighton. For good. That's impossible. Evelyn snapped. Where the hell would he go? In an instant, it hit her like a freight train. Grace. That meddling sister of his must have taken him away. Weren't they supposed to hate each other? Evelyn slammed her fist onto the desk, the crack echoing through the room. Caleb, she hissed, do you really think running away will save you from me? Keep dreaming. You belong to me, and I will drag you back. She snatched her coat and bolted out the door. After pulling every string she had, she managed to track down Grace's old apartment in Brighton. But the moment she pounded on the door, a neighbor poked their head out. Oh, the brother and sister? They packed up and left this morning. He was gone. Caleb was actually gone. Crushed by reality, Evelyn slumped down right there in the hallway. Her eyes were wide and empty as she mumbled to herself. Caleb, how could you be so cold? How could you just abandon me and disappear like this? I already miss you so much. 2 days later, 1,000 miles away in the capital, Grace drove Caleb straight to a high-end private hospital for his first day of work. Sitting in the passenger seat, Caleb stared at his sister in total shock. Wait, when did you even set this up for me? The exact second you called me and said you were finally getting a divorce, Grace replied smoothly, glancing his way. Seeing his utterly dumbfounded expression, a rare, soft smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. Caleb was genuinely speechless. Grace had swooped in and saved his life in more ways than he could count lately. To her, maybe it was just standard big sister duty. But to Caleb, it was the first time in years he actually felt the genuine warmth of family. Grace reached over and playfully ruffled his hair. All right, dummy, stop overthinking it. Just go kick some butt at your new job. Caleb cleared his throat, hiding his emotion with a bright grin. I promise I won't let you down. His new gig was right in his wheelhouse, obviously thanks to Grace pulling some major strings. She had hooked him up with a sweet position in the VIP recovery wing. The patient load was super light, no back-breaking hours, and absolutely zero graveyard shifts. Honestly, Caleb was loving every second of it. Since he was still apartment hunting, he was crashing at Grace's place for the time being. Later that evening, he walked through the front door, exhausted but happy, only to find a total stranger standing in the living room. Their eyes locked, and both of them completely froze. The guy was ridiculously well-dressed, looking straight out of a designer catalog. Every single hair was perfectly in place, and he was rocking a slick pair of gold-rimmed glasses. Who the hell are you? Caleb's mind raced. Was this guy Grace's boyfriend? I mean, how else could he just waltz in and out like he owned the place? The stranger flashed a bright, easy smile. Hey there, I'm Miss Winter's personal assistant, Daniel Hart. Mind if I ask, are you her boyfriend? Caleb didn't know whether to burst out laughing or facepalm. They had literally just mistaken times each other, times for Grace's secret lover. Just as Caleb opened his mouth to clear the air, Grace's cool, steady voice rang out from right behind him. Yes, he's my boyfriend. Caleb froze like a deer in headlights. Wait, what the hell was going on here? He whipped his head around, only to see Grace walking in, cool as a cucumber. Without missing a beat, she smoothly linked her arm through his. You head on inside first, she murmured. Though his brain was still short-circuiting, Caleb played along and gave a slight nod. He spun on his heel and retreated to his room. A few minutes later, a soft knock echoed. Grace? Come on in. By then, Caleb had already slipped into some comfy loungewear. He looked completely at ease. But Grace didn't step over the threshold. Hovering right by the doorway, she dropped the bomb. No one at work knows your real identity. So, for the time being, I'm going to need you to play the role of my boyfriend. Caleb stared at her, wide-eyed. He chewed on the thought for a second before saying, isn't that crossing a line? If I'm hogging that spot, aren't I going to ruin your chances of finding a Times Real Times guy? He'd known this girl for years, after all, and she had literally always times been single. In all their time together, Caleb had never caught wind of her dating anyone, not once. Were her standards just sky high, or was there some hidden reason? That sort of thing is all about fate anyway, she brushed it off. It really doesn't matter. Having dropped that absolute bombshell, Grace just turned on her heel and walked away. No further explanation. Nothing. Caleb stood there mulling it over before letting out a helpless, amused sigh. Pretty soon, he shoved the whole crazy incident to the back of his mind. Bright and early the very next morning, Caleb stumbled out of his bedroom, only to spot Grace chilling in the living room. She was already sharp, suited up, and looking totally ready to conquer the day. "Morning, Grace." He threw her a warm smile. Grace immediately stood up. "Let's go. I'm driving you to work." "Oh, no need. The subway is totally fine," Caleb protested, waving his hands frantically so he wouldn't be a burden. But Grace just reached out and gripped his forearm tight. "Move it. We're running late." And just like that, Caleb somehow found himself buckled into the passenger seat of her sleek ride. Halfway there, a notification pinged on Caleb's phone. He glanced down at the screen, and a deep frown instantly creased his forehead. Disgusted, he killed the screen and tossed the phone aside. Even though he had completely uprooted his life, changed his number, and wiped his social media, his toxic ex, Evelyn, was still stalking him. That psycho had literally hunted down every single one of his old coworkers and buddies, digging through every possible connection until she finally sniffed out his new info. Now, she was blowing up his phone with daily, desperate texts. But Caleb? He hadn't given this pathetic harassment a single reply. Not even once. Today was absolutely no different. Catching the vibe, Grace turned her head and shot him a side eye. Out of nowhere, she pressed. "Why are you ignoring that? Just spam. Don't worry about it," Caleb muttered, staring blankly out the passenger window. His perfectly good morning mood was officially trashed. Sensing the tension, Grace's voice turned dead serious. "Hey, if something goes down, you tell me. Don't try to shoulder everything all by yourself." Caleb slowly nodded, a soft smile finally breaking through. "Yeah, I know." Soon, Grace pulled up right to the hospital entrance. She waited, watching him safely walk through those sliding doors before stepping on the gas. As she drove, she immediately dialed her assistant. "Get Evelyn on the line. Give that woman a very clear warning." Grace's eyes were practically shooting daggers, an absolute ice queen with zero mercy on her flawless face. "Right away, Miss Winters." But weirdly, her assistant didn't immediately end the call. He hesitated, stumbling over his words. Grace arched an eyebrow. "Is there something else?" "Well, ma'am, Daniel just mentioned that you finally have a boyfriend." "Huge congratulations," the guy cheered, letting out an excited little laugh. Grace's fingers lightly drummed against the steering wheel, her tense posture melting just a bit. "Thank you." Her assistant was completely floored. The legendary Ice Queen didn't snap at him or deny it. Holy crap, had hell frozen over? Was the boss finally in love? Meanwhile, over at the hospital, Caleb was dealing with a very unique case. The patient looked to be around 26 or 27, but it was bad he couldn't speak a single word, and his limbs were totally wasted away. He was stuck in rehab, desperate for recovery. Now, Caleb was a pro. He'd handled plenty of cases like this before. Usually, it was just burnout, sudden collapses triggered by insane work hours, zero sleep, and terrible diets. Getting right to it, Caleb shifted into doctor mode, skillfully running through his standard physical exam. But there was something weird. The patient kept locking onto Caleb with these striking, intense eyes, practically begging for his attention. At first, Caleb was totally oblivious. But halfway through massaging the guy's stiff arm, he finally caught that desperate, unblinking stare. Sensing the urgency, Caleb whipped out a pen and scribbled on a notepad. "Are you in pain somewhere?" Blink once for yes. He held the paper right up to the patient's face. Without a second's hesitation, the young man squeezed his eyes shut and blinked hard. Caleb quickly but carefully gave the patient a full-body exam, scanning for any hidden problems. What he found was almost comical. A rogue plastic bottle cap was wedged right underneath the poor guy's back. It even had the words, "Try again," printed on the inside. Some careless family member must have just left it trapped in the bed. Shaking his head with a helpless sigh, Caleb tossed the ridiculous piece of plastic onto the nightstand. He grabbed his pen and notepad, asking if anything else was hurting. Seeing the instant relief washing over the man's eyes, Caleb finally offered a warm smile. Right on cue, his cell phone started buzzing in his pocket. The screen flashed with a local number. Making sure the patient was tucked in, nice and comfortable, he did one last quick check before stepping out into the hallway to answer it. "Caleb, it's me, Evelyn. I made it to the capital. Can we please meet up? Caleb's brow furrowed in deep disgust. He honestly hadn't expected his ex-wife to track him all the way to the city like some kind of lingering ghost. A hot wave of irritation flared in his chest, and he shot her down without a second thought. Don't bother. Everything between us is done and dusted. We have absolutely zero reason to see each other. No, Caleb, wait. I owe you so much. I'd give you my very life if I could, Evelyn cried out, her voice dripping with fake emotion. Here we go again. Caleb rolled his eyes. She had always been an absolute master at weaponizing those sweet, touching phrases. Back when he was foolish enough to love her, he used to eat that garbage up. But now? Now it just made his stomach turn. He let out a harsh, freezing laugh. I really don't want your life, Evelyn. If you kick the bucket, who would be left to baby your precious brother, Ethan? Spare me the theatrics. You couldn't even fool a 3-year-old with that acting. Without waiting for her to whine another word, Caleb slammed the end button. He leaned against the wall, clutching his chest to steady his racing heart. He was legitimately seething with anger. Lately, whenever he looked back at the absolute train wreck of their past, he asked himself how on earth he had ever been blind enough to fall for a woman like her. Was it because she played the sweet, innocent card so flawlessly? Or because she expertly molded herself into exactly what he wanted? Or maybe he had just been a sucker for the supposedly deep devotion she showed her brother. Whatever the reason, it had all been a total illusion. Some people are just professional liars, showing you nothing but fake strengths until the ring is on their finger. But the second you are actually stuck living together, the mask slips, and they do not even bother pretending to care anymore. Taking a deep breath to shove those toxic thoughts aside, Caleb headed back into the room to finish checking on his patient. The guy had his eyes resting at first, but as soon as Caleb resumed the checkup, those eyes fluttered open to stare right back at him. This time, though, the man didn't seem frantic or eager to communicate any pain. He just watched Caleb in total, peaceful silence. Caleb felt the heavy gaze tracking him, but brushed it off easily. After all, being trapped in a hospital bed all day had to be mind-numbingly boring. Staring at the only moving human in the room was pretty much standard behavior. Later that afternoon, when Caleb finally clocked out and left work, he stepped through the front sliding doors only to freeze. Standing there with a massive bouquet of red roses and a sickeningly sweet smile was the very last person he wanted to see. Caleb's face instantly dropped into an icy glare. He pivoted on his heel and marched the other way, refusing to give her a single second of his time. Panic flashed across Evelyn's face as she sprinted to catch up. Caleb, please, are you still angry with me? He let out a dark sneer. We are literally divorced. We are absolutely nothing to each other now. So do us both a favor and stop stalking me. She shook her head stubbornly. I can't do that. Evelyn grabbed his sleeve, her eyes burning with a crazy intensity. I transferred to the main branch here in the capital. Caleb, I am going to win you back. Just give me one more chance, please. Caleb violently ripped his arm away from her grip. Not a chance in hell. I gave you plenty of chances, and you threw every single one of them right in my face. You need to pack your bags and go home. God forbid little Ethan scrapes his knee while you are gone, you might just die of a broken heart. But Evelyn was completely unhinged and refused to back down. She clamped her hands onto his arm with a desperate, crushing grip, terrified he would bolt. Caleb, I messed up. I finally realize how wrong I was. I swear to you, I will cut off contact with Ethan. I will keep my distance. I mean it this time, she pleaded, solemnly swearing on her life. Caleb looked down at her with absolute zero empathy. What you do with your life is none of my business. Listen to me very carefully, because I am only saying this once. We are done. Stop harassing me right now, or I swear to God I am calling the cops. But Evelyn just smiled with that stubborn, twisted obsession. Fine, call them. If it means you have to keep talking to me, I will happily take a trip to the station. Caleb felt a blood vessel nearly pop in his forehead. This woman was actually going to drive him insane. When did she turn into such a desperate psycho? It was frankly revolting. Get your hands off me, he snarled, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly sharp pitch. He shoved her away forcefully, swatting the massive bouquet right out of her hands. A shower of crushed red petals exploded across the dirty concrete. Evelyn didn't care about looking desperate. She threw her arms around him, clinging on for dear life. Inhaling his scent like a total creep, she begged, Caleb, please. Just forgive me, okay? I literally cannot live without you. Get off me, Caleb snapped. Just as he was fighting to break free from her insane grip, a miracle happened. Evelyn was violently yanked away from him. Before Caleb could even process what just happened, a familiar, fiercely protective figure stepped right in front of him. It was Grace. Tall, slender, and absolute boss material, she shielded him completely. Her voice was ice cold as she warned, "I've already called the cops. If you run right now, you might just make it. Otherwise, I'd be more than happy to drag you to the station myself." Grace had literally shoved Evelyn aside like a piece of trash. The crazy ex-wife stumbled and ate dirt, looking like an absolute mess. Her fancy dark dress was ruined, covered in dust. Scrambling up, she wiped the dirt off and shot Grace a toxic, venomous glare. "What the hell does it matter to you if I want my man back?" Evelyn hissed. "Unless you plan on babysitting him 24 hours a day, I'm never going to stop chasing him. He's going to fall back in love with me eventually. Keep dreaming, psycho." Caleb shot back, glaring at her with pure disgust. "I must have been out of my mind to ever fall for someone as toxic as you. You're completely shameless." Evelyn's eyes went wide with shock. "You think my deep love for you is shameless?" she shrieked. "Don't you dare ruin the word love. You don't even know what that means." Without missing a beat, Grace pulled out her phone and made a call. Almost instantly, Ethan's voice came through the speaker. "Hello?" he answered. "Listen closely, Mr. Hayes. Your unhinged sister is out here harassing her ex-husband again. Clearly, you have zero control over her," Grace said, her tone absolutely freezing. Hearing this, Caleb was completely lost. Why the heck was Grace talking to Ethan like she held all the cards? On the other end, Ethan sounded panicked, practically begging. "I am so sorry, Grace. This is entirely my fault. I promise I'll lock her down. Please, just give me one more chance, okay?" Hearing her own brother grovel, Evelyn panicked. "Ethan, what the hell are you saying? What kind of shady deal did you make with her?" Ethan sounded pathetic and totally defeated. "Can you just come home right now? Just get back here and I'll explain everything," he pleaded. Meanwhile, Caleb stared at Grace, his mind racing. Grace had promised him earlier that he didn't need to sweat the small stuff. She swore she'd take care of everything. And like a fool, he had stepped back and let her handle his messy divorce. To her credit, she was a total powerhouse. She had snagged that divorce certificate in record time, but putting the pieces together now, Caleb realized she must have paid a massive price behind the scenes. How else could it have gone down so flawlessly? A few minutes later, Grace smoothly escorted Caleb out of that nightmare. The second they got into the car, Caleb opened his mouth to interrogate her, but she grabbed his arm first. "Did that crazy woman do this to you?" Grace frowned hard, her voice dripping with genuine worry. Caleb glanced down and saw a nasty red mark on his forearm. It was glaringly obvious. His face stiffened, suddenly feeling super awkward. He knitted his brows but kept his mouth shut. Grace gently let go of him. Her face turned into an absolute mask of ice as she fired up the engine. The car tore out of there like a rocket, aggressively weaving into the heavy traffic. Caleb nervously glanced over at her. Even though her face was perfectly blank, he could feel the freezing, terrifying aura radiating off her. She was absolutely furious, just bottling it all up. Thinking back to when they first met at 8 years old, he realized something crazy. No matter how utterly pissed off she got, she had never once snapped at him. Her voice was always that same calm, comforting anchor. When she looked at him, it was always with pure dedication, and she had literally never broken a single promise. Turns out, he had the ultimate ride-or-die sister right by his side this whole time. He had just been way too rebellious to see it. From being a bratty kid to a clueless adult, he constantly fought her, completely missing how much she cared. The tense car ride finally ended as they pulled smoothly into the garage. Caleb unclicked his seatbelt, ready to bolt, but Grace suddenly called his name. "Yeah? What is it?" She just stared at him for a few intense seconds before dropping a bomb. "If Evelyn cut ties with Ethan forever, would you ever take her back?" Caleb stared at her, totally blindsided. After a heavy pause, he muttered, "Grace, why the hell are you asking me that out of nowhere?" "Because I need to know." Her eyes locked onto his, dead serious. "I need to know if you still have any lingering feelings for that woman." Caleb looked down, his composure cracking just a bit. For a long moment, the car fell dead silent. You could literally hear a pin drop over their breathing. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Caleb broke the silence. I stopped loving her a long, long time ago. Grace gave a tiny, relieved smile. Is that really true? Look, this whole marriage was an absolute joke. From day one, I was never a husband. I was just a glorified caregiver for the Hayes family, he vented. People loved calling me the supportive man behind Evelyn's success, but the ugly truth was something else entirely. The only reason she even picked me was because of my medical background. She just needed a free doctor for her brother's condition. As the painful truth spilled out, Caleb took a shaky, deep breath, then slowly let out a long breath. It felt like exhaling could finally untangle the tight, heavy knot weighing down his chest. He lifted his gaze, looking calmly at Grace. Besides, the twisted relationship between those two siblings is just completely disgusting. I honestly don't want to waste another breath on them. Hearing this, Grace just nodded in quiet agreement. Then, her voice soft and slow, she said, "In that case, just stop thinking about her. Go back and get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow, I'll call the hospital and get you a day off. Just rest at home." But Caleb quickly brushed it off. "No need, really. I'm perfectly fine." Suddenly, a warm, gentle hand reached out and touched his face. He turned, his gaze locking with Grace's deep, mesmerizing eyes. Right then and there, she was softly, tenderly stroking his cheek. Caleb's heart instantly did a nervous flip. He had absolutely no idea why, but in that fleeting second, a sudden rush of pure panic washed over him. Maybe it was because her face was just way too close. Or maybe the tight, enclosed space of the car was playing tricks on his mind. Or perhaps it was just because her touch was incredibly gentle. For a brief, dizzying moment, Caleb was completely caught off guard and at a total loss for words. But just as quickly, Grace pulled her hand back, her tone returning to normal. "All right, let's head home." Caleb gave a stiff, awkward nod, but that wild, fluttering sensation in his chest refused to fade. Long after they got back, he found himself staring blankly at the ceiling from his bed. His mind was in absolute chaos. What the heck just happened to him in that car? He didn't dare make a peep. Yet his brain wouldn't stop replaying that single moment on an endless loop. Later, when the restless tossing and turning finally drove him crazy, he fired up a video call with his best bro, Ryan. The second the call connected, the sharp-eyed Ryan immediately squinted at the screen. "Dude, what is up with that look on your face? Something's definitely off. Is the new job kicking your butt? Need me to book a flight and come keep you company?" Caleb forced a chuckle. "Nah, man. It's nothing serious. It's just, Evelyn showed up to bother me again today. But don't worry, it's already been handled." Ryan instantly raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Are you kidding me? She actually stalked you all the way out to the Capitol? I thought she was glued to her precious brother's side. I mean, now that you guys are officially divorced, she should be living her twisted little happily ever after with him. Why the hell is she still harassing you?" Well, Evelyn tried telling Grace that she was completely clueless about her own background. Apparently, Ethan and her parents had been keeping her in the dark this whole time. Caleb's voice was dead flat, completely void of any emotion as he laid out the facts. Ryan frowned, clearly on edge. "Okay, so what? Listen to me, man. You finally dragged yourself out of that raging dumpster fire. Do not, and I mean do not go getting soft-hearted and dive right back in. If you do, you're going to lose every ounce of respect you have left." Caleb offered a faint, reassuring smile. "I know, dude. I'm never making that stupid mistake again. Honestly, my life is great right now." But right as he said it, he hesitated, his voice trailing off. Ryan, sharp as a tack, instantly caught the shift and leaned in. "Spill it! What is going on with you? Did you stumble into some juicy new romance? Come on, Dish." Caleb rubbed his temples, caught somewhere between wanting to laugh and wanting to cry. "Bro, no. I literally just moved to the Capitol. Cut the crap. The look on your face totally gives you away," Ryan pushed. "You've clearly got something heavy weighing on your mind." Honestly, sometimes Ryan's observation skills were as freakishly sharp as Sherlock Holmes. Caleb clammed up instantly. He sat there for a long time, desperately trying to string his thoughts together, before finally whispering, "Ryan, Grace and I don't share a single drop of blood either. What do you think we should wait? Hold up," Ryan gasped. "Don't tell me you've actually fallen for your sister?" Ryan's eyes practically bugged right out of his skull. "No, absolutely not." Caleb scrambled to deny it. "I'm just saying." I think we really need to keep some distance between us. Otherwise, wouldn't we just turn into the exact same twisted kind of hypocrites as Evelyn and Ethan? Because of that, I've been seriously debating if I should pack up and move out. Ryan stroked his chin, chewing on the thought before answering, Man, you two are completely different from them. I remember you telling me that Grace didn't even join your family until you were already 8 years old. You guys grew up fully aware that you weren't blood-related, and let's be real, your relationship was always pretty terrible. You two were basically sworn enemies, weren't you? Caleb let out a dry, bitter laugh. Yeah, calling us sworn enemies honestly isn't even an exaggeration. Then what the heck are you so worried about? Ryan suddenly flashed a wicked, sly grin. Could it be? Your big sister has been treating you a little too well lately, and your cold heart is finally starting to flutter? Oh, shut up and get lost, Caleb snapped, rolling his eyes so hard it hurt through the screen. Ryan had obviously just been messing around, throwing out a stupid joke, but the very next second, Caleb's face fell, his troubled thoughts storming back. The thing is, Grace has always been super careful about keeping a healthy distance between us. But today she suddenly got way too close. Right then, my heart. It just felt totally chaotic. Hearing this, Ryan completely dropped his joking tone, leaning in seriously. Look, at the end of the day, you both know you aren't biological siblings. It's honestly totally normal for you to start overthinking things right now. But I think the absolute most important thing to figure out is what kind of true, deep-down feelings you two actually have for each other. Caleb dragged a heavy hand down his face, totally exhausted. Dude, I suddenly feel like I don't even know myself anymore. Ryan, I'm terrified. I'm just making all this up in my head. Ryan just smirked mysteriously. Not necessarily, bro. Let's just play it cool for now and wait to see how the plot unfolds. Bright and early the very next morning, Grace once again offered to drive Caleb to work, but this time, he firmly put his foot down. Grace, taking the subway is actually super convenient for me. Going out of your way to drive me just wastes way too much of your time. Caleb was determined to brave the day solo, and surprisingly, Grace didn't push back. But right as he was about to hit the road, she casually reached into her car and handed him some breakfast. He took the food, and man, that weird, fluttery feeling bubbled up in his chest all over again. She was being seriously thoughtful toward him. Was he just making things up in his head? But shaking his head, he quickly shoved all those messy, confusing thoughts right out of his brain. Still, he stumbled a bit as he walked away. Grace watched him get all flustered, a tiny, knowing smirk creeping onto her beautiful face. Suddenly, she called out to him. Caleb. He froze dead in his tracks, turning around looking totally confused. Be my +1 to a gathering this Friday night. Clear your schedule, she told him, cool as a cucumber. Caleb stood there stunned for a second before mumbling, I'll think about it. Then he practically bolted without looking back. Now, ever since Grace had laid down the law, his toxic ex, Evelyn, hadn't dared to show her face at his hospital again. But the crazy woman was still blowing up his phone with harassing messages. He blocked number after number, but the psycho just wouldn't quit. It was driving him absolutely insane. He was seriously this close to changing his digits for good. Fast forward to Friday afternoon. Caleb's young patient, Liam, had finally gotten his voice back. He was already cruising around in a wheelchair and seemed to be one seriously busy dude. The second his health improved even slightly, he was constantly on the move. He even demanded that Caleb tag along everywhere like a personal bodyguard just in case he needed medical help on the fly. By 4 o'clock, Caleb was chilling in some corporate lounge, waiting for Liam to wrap up his business so they could head back to the ward. Out of nowhere, his phone buzzed. It was Grace. I'm picking you up after work, she chimed, sounding surprisingly upbeat. He checked his watch and sighed. Honestly, I have no idea when I'm getting out of here today. Why don't you? But before he could even finish his sentence, she cut him right off. Then I'll just wait for you to clock out. He opened his mouth, completely speechless. Just then, Liam rolled up in his wheelchair. Hey, Dr. Cole, are you free tonight? I'd love to buy you dinner. Caleb hurriedly muttered an excuse to Grace and hung up the phone. He turned to his patient. Sorry, man, I'm booked for the night. Are you all set here? Once I get you back to the hospital, I'm officially off the clock. Liam looked bummed, but didn't push it. Instead, he played it perfectly cool and said, All right, let's grab a bite some other time. Caleb gave him a tight smile, figuring the guy was just being polite, so he brushed the offer right off. By the time he finally dropped Liam off and clocked out, Grace was already parked out front, waiting for him. She was dressed to kill today, rocking a gorgeous, custom-tailored long dress. She looked icy, stunning, and completely out of his league. Her insanely pretty face was practically glowing in the evening light. Caleb looked down at his boring, everyday work clothes and cringed. He shifted awkwardly. Should I run back and change? Grace flashed a tiny smile. I brought you something. She popped open the car door and handed him a slick shopping bag flashing a high-end designer logo. Caleb just stared at it, dumbfounded. He looked over at her. He had literally been eyeing this exact outfit for months. He just never pulled the trigger because his closet was already way too packed with stuff he didn't need. But here was Grace, making the call for him. He hesitated. Wait, what? Are you expecting me to transfer you the cash for this? Grace rarely joked around. Caleb pressed his lips together in embarrassment. You read my mind, she chuckled softly. Get dressed in the back. As she spoke, she pushed a button, rolling up the privacy partition. Combined with the tinted glass, it gave him the perfect, secure little spot to swap his clothes in peace. When Caleb finally stepped out looking fresh, Grace completely froze the second she laid eyes on him. A spark of pure amazement flashed in her eyes before she caught herself and smirked. Ready to hit the road? Caleb felt totally out of his depth. He was still a complete bundle of nerves. For a split second back there, the way she looked at him was intensely, almost dangerously possessive. He definitely saw it. Still, he wasn't about to let it get to his head and ruin things. He knew exactly where he stood on the food chain. Why would a total powerhouse like Grace ever fall for a guy like him? A divorced, everyday doctor? Please. Fairy tales were a total scam. They rolled up to the fancy restaurant in no time. After tossing the keys to the valet, Grace suddenly held her hand out to him. Caleb froze, staring at her hand like it was an alien object, totally lost. Boyfriend duty, remember? She whispered. Feeling his face burn, he finally reached out and laced his fingers through her delicate, soft hand. Her warm grip instantly melted the chill in his own trembling fingers. Taking a deep breath, he put on a brave face and let her lead him right through the front doors. They didn't stop walking until they finally reached a quiet, secluded VIP room. The entire way there, Caleb's mind was racing a mile a minute, desperately trying to figure out what the hell Grace meant. Faking it as her boyfriend in front of her coworkers was one thing. Honestly, it made sense to help her block all those creepy guys at the office. But now, did she really need to hide the truth from her closest friends, too? What was the catch? Do your friends not know I'm your younger brother, either? Caleb just couldn't hold the question in any longer. Grace flashed a mysterious smile and locked eyes with him. Aren't we both only children? An adopted sibling doesn't exactly count. Dropping that bombshell, she dragged a completely stunned Caleb right into the private room. Oh, Grace, you finally made it. A slightly plump woman rushed over, greeting them with a massive smile. So, this is the famous boyfriend. Wow, he's seriously handsome, not bad at all. You've got great taste, girl. Grace didn't miss a beat, smoothly raising her hand to introduce him. Meet my boyfriend, Caleb Cole. Oh, hey there, nice to meet you. The entire room turned their attention to Caleb, eyeing him with genuinely warm smiles. One guy even shouted out, the man who finally tamed Grace, our very own warrior queen, has actually appeared. Come on, everyone, give it up for him. Caleb tried his absolute hardest to keep a straight face and act completely chill. But if he said he wasn't totally freaked out, he'd be lying through his teeth. Right then, his heart was a chaotic mess, pounding like crashing waves and raging thunderstorms. This whole situation was hitting him way too hard, but right on cue, a grating, obnoxious voice pierced the room. Hold on. Isn't that Miss Hayes' husband? The lively VIP room went dead silent in a split second. The guy who just spoke was a tall, scrawny dude with sharp, prominent cheekbones. His fierce, glaring eyes practically screamed that he was bad news. Jason, what on earth are you talking about? You definitely mistook him for someone else, right, bro? Someone sitting next to him asked, trying to laugh off the tension. Jason just narrowed his eyes, practically burning a hole through Caleb with his stare. He whipped his phone out of his pocket. Why don't you see for yourselves if it's him? There, right on the screen, was a photo of Caleb sitting next to another woman at a restaurant. The two of them were quietly chatting about something intimate. That woman in the picture was Evelyn. Caleb's face instantly dropped, his expression turning incredibly dark. It wasn't because he gave a damn about being embarrassed, but because he was terrified of making Grace look bad in front of her friends. Sure, he never thought being a divorced man made him a loser, but just because he didn't care didn't mean society wouldn't judge him for it. People always love to drag you down into their petty, toxic drama. Swallowing hard, he turned his head and looked right at Grace. Yet, Grace's face was as completely unfazed as ever. It was like she hadn't heard a single word that jerk just said. She just smiled faintly at Caleb, completely ignoring the staring crowd, and gently guided him to take a seat at the table. Then, without a word, she elegantly spread a napkin across his lap. Caleb started, ready to suggest they just come clean and tell everyone the truth, but she cut him off instantly. "Call me by my name." Her message was loud and clear. She wanted him to keep playing the role of her devoted boyfriend. Caleb lowered his gaze, his eyelashes fluttering slightly, and ultimately swallowed his words. Even with that massive bombshell dropped, since neither Caleb nor Grace took the bait, Jason was left looking like a total clown with nothing to work with. After a few heavy rounds of drinks, Jason seized the moment, grabbed his glass, and boldly slid into the seat right next to Grace. With an incredibly fake, smarmy smile, he sneered, "Grace, I really never expected that after being so damn picky you'd end up settling for a divorced guy. So, I guess that's your type, huh?" Caleb caught every word. His brows furrowed sharply in annoyance. It was painfully obvious this trashy guy had a massive crush on Grace. The way Jason glared at him was dripping with pure hostility and absolute disgust. But Grace? She didn't even bother to give Jason a second glance. Her cold eyes stayed completely locked on the wine glass in her hand as she replied with icy detachment, "What the hell does my love life have to do with you?" Jason's arrogant smirk instantly froze. Looking deeply offended, he scoffed, "Wow, look at you. I was only making a harmless joke. Are we really not that close? What exactly makes you think you're even qualified to joke around with me?" Grace absolutely destroyed him, showing zero mercy. Jason's face flushed a deep, humiliating shade of crimson. He shot up from his chair, furious. "You really are?" But right at that explosive moment, the friend who had invited Jason quickly rushed in and dragged him back. "Hey, come over here, man. Old Wang wants to take a shot with you." Dragging Jason into the corner, the guy hissed nervously, "Dude, I brought you here to help me drink, not start a war. I still need a massive favor from Grace. Stop causing trouble for me, damn it." Jason just let out a petty, cold snort. "I just can't stand looking at that loser she calls a boyfriend. A washed-up, divorced guy thinking he can climb the social ladder? On what basis? Seriously, on what basis?" The friend rolled his eyes. "Because he clearly has skills, bro. Did you not see how Caleb has Grace completely wrapped around his little finger?" Jason wasn't buying a single word of it. In terms of background, money, and ability, he genuinely believed he crushed Caleb in every single category. In his delusional mind, the man standing by Grace's side should have absolutely been him. Across the room, Caleb turned his head, casting a quiet glance at Grace. She was still acting as cool and completely indifferent as ever. No matter who approached or spoke to her, she only gave the calmest, most composed responses. It was as if absolutely nothing in this world could ever make her crack or genuinely care. Thankfully, besides that one massive jerk named Jason, everyone else was extremely polite to Caleb. After all, no matter what his past was, his current identity commanded respect. He was the one and only boyfriend of Grace. Even if they didn't respect a divorced man, they absolutely had to respect her authority. Leaning in close, Caleb whispered softly to Grace, "I need to go use the restroom." Grace instantly stood up right beside him. "I'm coming with you." "Hey, no need. You should stay and chat with the others," Caleb said hurriedly, but Grace wasn't having any of it. She just grabbed his hand and dragged him right out the door. The two of them walked down the dimly lit restaurant corridor together. From both sides of the hall, the loud laughter and casual chatter of dinner parties drifted over, breaking the heavy silence. Yet, the two of them were unusually quiet. When Caleb finally stepped out of the restroom, he spotted Grace standing on a nearby balcony, quietly smoking a slim cigarette. Seeing him step out, she immediately stubbed it out. "Grace, I really embarrassed you today. I'm so sorry. Caleb's voice was completely dejected, his spirit obviously crushed. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Grace patted his shoulder gently, trying to comfort him. It's totally fine. Don't overthink things, okay? Caleb leaned heavily against the balcony railing, staring up at the star-filled night sky, but there wasn't a single spark of light left in his eyes. He honestly thought he could just start completely over, but his dark past had burned a deep brand right into his soul. It was like a hideous, throbbing scar, constantly reminding him of the absolutely ridiculous mistakes he had made. Caleb, Grace called out to him softly, snapping him right back to reality. Only then did he realize just how incredibly deep and intense her eyes were in that moment, staring at him without even blinking. What is it? Look, I don't care about any of that garbage, Grace said with absolute seriousness. When you're with me, you never need to overthink things. Caleb froze up for a second, and then it suddenly hit him. Right. He was just playing the role of her fake boyfriend to help block out unwanted attention. He wasn't exactly someone she was dating with marriage in mind. He had taken the whole gig way too seriously. He suddenly felt like an absolute clown. He had totally lost himself in the act. But in the very next heartbeat, he felt Grace's warm presence suddenly closing in on him. His eyes flew wide open in stunned silence. Her cool lips, carrying the faint, intoxicating scent of red wine and tobacco, pressed firmly against his. His entire body completely froze up instantly. For a split second, his mind went blank. Grace naturally wrapped her arms tight around his waist, pulling him closer and tighter, acting as if she desperately wanted to melt him right into her bones and become one with him. What the hell was actually happening? How did they suddenly end up like this? After the deep kiss finally broke, Grace slowly opened her eyes and smiled. She gently cupped Caleb's flushed cheeks and whispered softly right into his ear, "You silly boy. You're supposed to close your eyes when you kiss." But Caleb managed to ask in a hoarse, muffled voice, "Our relationship really shouldn't be like this." "And exactly what kind of relationship do we have?" Grace suddenly challenged him, her tone dead serious. The word siblings was hovering right on the very tip of his tongue, but painfully, Caleb just couldn't lie to himself enough to actually say it out loud. "When our parents passed away, they begged me to take good care of you, but I failed. I just let you suffer alone. I feel so incredibly ashamed," Grace confessed, her voice heavy with deep self-blame. Caleb's body stiffened noticeably at those words. Then, he suddenly shoved her away. Wow. Was she only kissing him and treating him this well out of guilt and some dying wish from their parents? Was that really all this was? He waved his hand dismissively and forced a bitter smile. "I can take care of my own self. You seriously don't need to feel guilty. I chose my own path. Even if it hurts like hell, I have to keep walking it alone. No one else needs to take responsibility for my life. I'll take full responsibility for myself." After dropping those heavy words, he turned on his heel and walked away, once again leaving Grace staring at his retreating back. Grace watched him go with incredibly deep, sorrowful eyes. That impossibly stubborn, tall back made her flash back to the boy he was back then, the one who had walked away from her just exactly like this. 2 days later, on his scheduled day off, Caleb completely moved out of Grace's place. After a crazy incident like that went down between them, having to face each other every single day was bound to be unbearably awkward. When Caleb was finally packing up to leave, Grace didn't ask a single question. Still, he felt the need to explain, "I just want to live on my own for a bit." Grace didn't say a single word in response, nor did she even try to beg him to stay. She just silently helped him carry his heavy bags down. "I'll drive you there," Grace offered quietly. Caleb quickly shot her down. "No need. I only have a few bags with me. I can just grab a cab." "I've really been a huge burden to you lately, Grace." But she just looked at him and said in a chillingly calm tone, "Caleb, I am not your sister. Don't ever call me that again from now on." Caleb paused in his tracks. Thinking about it honestly, she was absolutely right. At this messed up point, the two of them definitely weren't suited to play make-believe siblings anymore. "All right, Grace. Goodbye then." Caleb offered a faint smile. "Goodbye. You take good care of yourself out there." Grace gave him a small wave. Then she stood there, silently watching his taxi speed away down the street. Only after the car had traveled a pretty good distance did Caleb finally dare to glance back. He saw that Grace was still standing frozen in that exact same spot, seeing him off. which made his brow furrow tightly. Was he honestly just taking everything way too seriously again? Grace really had been incredibly good to him. But if she was only doing all this to repay some old debt of gratitude, just to fulfill his dead parents' final wishes, then he absolutely refused to accept that kind of fake pity. When he had gotten together with his ex, Evelyn, back in the day, it was only because he genuinely believed that she truly liked him and had real, honest feelings for him. If he had noticed even the slightest, tiniest red flag that Evelyn was just using him as a pawn, he never would have stayed with her in a million years. And as for Grace, Caleb just slowly, painfully closed his eyes, shutting out the world. He admitted he had feelings for Grace, sure, but that was it. He wasn't about to lose his head over it. He was stubbornly dead set on a love that gave 100%. If it wasn't all in, he didn't want any part of it. Later that night, while on a video call, Ryan squinted at the screen and asked in confusion, "Hold up. Why do I feel like you're not at home? Where are you?" Caleb didn't sugarcoat it. "I moved out." Ryan's jaw dropped. "Wait, why?" So Caleb laid out the whole crazy situation that went down earlier. After a heavy silence, Ryan just couldn't hold back anymore and asked, "Dude, why do I get the feeling she actually likes you, but she just sucks at showing it?" Caleb, however, was completely done draining his energy on this drama. He just shook his head and said, "Look, whatever her deal is, we're just not a match. It's better if we keep our distance, just like before." Seeing that Caleb had totally made up his mind, Ryan backed off and didn't try to push it. He still felt a little bummed out, though. Honestly, from a bro's perspective, Grace seemed like a pretty solid catch for Caleb. The next few days were blissfully quiet. Ever since he packed up and left, Grace hadn't bothered reaching out once. Even Evelyn, who usually never stopped blowing up his phone, went completely ghost, which naturally brought Caleb's mood right back up. But bright and early that morning, Caleb got assigned to check on a new patient. The second he pushed the door open, he froze cold. Evelyn was sitting right there on the bed, looking like an absolute wreck. It was only when she locked eyes with him that a tiny spark of life returned to her face. "Caleb!" He immediately spun around to walk out, but Evelyn cried out in panic. "Caleb, wait! I'm not here to mess with you. I'm genuinely sick." Caleb kept his back entirely turned to her, his voice ice cold. "Fine. I'll get another colleague to take over your case." "Wait, I have something I need to say to you. Can you please just listen to me finish before you leave?" Evelyn pleaded, her voice breaking with emotion. Caleb paused, figuring it was better to let her vent now than risk her getting her strength back just to stalk him later. Swallowing his irritation, Caleb walked back to her bedside to hear her out. "Caleb, I'm so sorry. I've treated you so terribly this whole time." As Evelyn spoke, her pale, sickly face twisted with guilt and sorrow. "There's absolutely zero point in telling me this now," Caleb replied flatly. Caleb wasn't about to waste another second on this sob story. Seeing his completely stone-cold reaction, tears started welling up in Evelyn's eyes. "I know, but I still need to give you a real apology. I am so sorry. Honestly, back then I didn't actually have feelings for you. I just wanted to play you, to use you to shoulder my financial burdens and pay my bills. I was awful." Hearing that, Caleb's cold gaze finally flickered. "Wow, Evelyn, you finally admit it. When Ethan was in the hospital, out of all the doctors who checked on him, you were the only one who stood out. You were just different. You treated your patients with such incredible care. You were a total professional. Honestly, whenever you were on shift, I felt so safe leaving Ethan in your hands. I was the one who snooped around, asking your coworkers all about your personal life. Once I found out you were single, I started plotting. I made up my mind to chase after you. I'll admit, I didn't love you at first. But the more time we spent together, the more I truly started falling for you. Caleb, I swear I'm not lying. I really, truly love you." Her voice cracked as she worked herself into a coughing fit. But Caleb just stood there like a statue, completely unfazed. No matter what kind of act this woman pulled now, she couldn't drag a single drop of pity out of him. He just stood in absolute silence, staring down at Evelyn, pressing his lips together without saying a single word. And as for Ethan, Evelyn rubbed her teary eyes, then desperately raised 3 fingers to swear. "From day one, I swear I only ever saw him as my little brother. I had absolutely no idea that we weren't related by blood. Caleb, please, do you believe me?" Caleb gave a quick, emotionless nod. "I believe you. Sure, I believe you. Are we done here? Caleb, can you ever forgive me? Evelyn stared up at the man standing before her, completely dazed. She always knew he was a gorgeous guy, especially rocking that white doctor's coat. But seeing him now, after so long, he looked infinitely more handsome than she remembered. So insanely handsome that she physically couldn't tear her eyes away from him for even a second. If you can treat me like a total stranger from now on, then yeah, I forgive you, Caleb snapped coldly. Caleb! Right on cue, a knock echoed from the door. Liam sat there in his wheelchair, flashing a knowing smile. Dr. Cole, we better head out. Caleb nodded. Glancing back at Evelyn's frantic face one last time, he muttered, I've got rounds to do. Get some rest. With that, Caleb spun on his heel and walked out. Instantly, Evelyn's desperate cries chased him down the hall. Caleb, I can't just be a stranger to you. I just can't do it. Of course, Caleb knew she wasn't going to stop clinging to him. But honestly, at this point, he literally could not care less. Meanwhile, back in a dingy rented apartment, Ethan was slumped in his wheelchair, bawling his eyes out like his whole world had ended. I swear I tried my best, but my sister won't listen to a damn word I say. It's like her soul was totally stolen by Caleb. There's literally nothing else I can do, he sobbed to the man standing in front of him, whose face was frozen in a cold, deadly glare. Her eyes stayed dead calm, locked onto that ridiculously fake face of his. I am so done listening to you. You couldn't pull it off, so cough up every single thing you choked down. Grace, please! Just give me one more chance, okay? I swear to you, even if I have to physically tie her up, I will keep my sister away from him, Ethan pleaded, his voice trembling with sheer panic. Grace just stared back, her expression absolute ice. You know damn well how this started, she said flatly. If you hadn't come crawling to me, swearing up and down that you could stop Evelyn from obsessing over Caleb, I never would have made this deal with you in the first place. But you choked. You completely failed to do what you promised. So really, what else is there left to say? Ethan bit his lip hard enough to draw blood. He looked like a man pushed right to the absolute edge, finally making a desperate choice. Don't worry. This time, it absolutely will not happen again. I swear it on my life. But the second Grace walked out that door, Ethan completely lost his mind. He trashed his entire room, smashing everything in sight into a million pieces. Caleb, why the hell are you so damn lucky? Why does every single woman revolve around you? I just wanted a good life with my sister. Why is that so freaking hard? Why? He screamed. But the wrecked room stayed dead silent. Nobody was there to give him an answer. Utterly defeated, he slumped back into his wheelchair, sobbing so hard it sounded like his very heart was being ripped to shreds. Meanwhile, Caleb slid into the passenger seat of Liam's car, his face an unreadable mask. Liam, on the other hand, was practically glowing with good vibes. He casually broke the ice. So, was that your ex-girlfriend? Or an ex-wife? Caleb didn't even try to hide the truth. And surprisingly, Liam didn't bat an eye. Honestly, Liam seemed pretty thrilled that Caleb played it straight with him. He just nodded and smiled. Well, like they say, a smart guy knows better than to go crawling back to his past. There are way too many amazing women out there to stay stuck on one. Caleb's brow furrowed just a fraction. He shot Liam a highly suspicious side-eye, shaking the weird feeling that there was a hidden heavy layer to those words. But for the moment, Liam just let it drop. Later that afternoon, Liam strolled right out of his big board meeting and made a beeline straight for Caleb. Turning on the ultimate gentleman charm, he flashed a flawless smile. Dr. Cole, would you do me the absolute honor of grabbing dinner with me tonight? Caleb opened his mouth to politely shoot him down, but Liam quickly beat him to the punch. You've already rejected me once. If you shoot me down again, my ego is going to be way too crushed to ever ask you next time. Caleb couldn't help but let out a defeated laugh. Look, last time, I seriously had a massive emergency to deal with. So, do I get the green light this time? Liam's smile was incredibly soft, radiating this warm, magnetic energy that just instantly put people at ease. Pushed into a corner, Caleb found it literally impossible to say no. All right, fine, let me just put in for some time off. But Liam just waved it off without a care. Don't even sweat it, I'll have my assistant clear your schedule. Come on, let's hit the restaurant. But Caleb was absolutely blindsided when they walked in. For what was supposed to be a casual, low-key dinner, Liam had actually rented out the entire damn restaurant. Sure, Caleb knew the guy was a young, hotshot executive. Even though Liam was a trust fund kid, he was genuinely brilliant and ruthless in his own right. He obviously had money to burn, but shutting down a whole high-end restaurant just for two guys eating dinner was totally going overboard. It instantly set off massive alarm bells in Caleb's head. So, is the vibe in here to your liking? Liam asked, his smile as warm as ever. It's great, but man, you really went way overboard on the budget, Caleb replied, his smile feeling totally stiff and forced. Liam's eyes darkened with a heavy, unreadable intensity. I didn't do this to show off, Liam explained softly. I rented the place out because I just wanted a totally quiet, private space to talk with you. I didn't want any interruptions. Caleb gave a slow nod, even though his brain was scrambling to figure out what on earth the two of them could possibly need to discuss so privately. They weren't exactly tight. At the end of the day, they were literally just a doctor and his patient. But as the dinner rolled on, Caleb slowly started seeing Liam in a completely different light. The guy was dangerously good at steering the conversation. Every single topic he casually dropped was perfectly tailored to Caleb's absolute favorite obsessions. It was painfully obvious that Liam had done some serious digging into his background beforehand. But the smoother and more charming Liam acted, the more Caleb's stomach tied itself into nervous knots. Let's be real, when another man comes on this incredibly strong and shows this level of intense interest, it's pretty damn hard not to read into it. Thankfully, Liam didn't drop any weird bombshells before the check arrived. He played it cool, like he really just wanted to shoot the breeze and catch up like old buddies. The night wrapped up with Liam dropping him right at the front gate of his apartment complex. Caleb tossed him a quick goodbye and turned to walk inside, but then his phone started buzzing in his pocket. He pulled it out, saw Grace's name flashing on the screen, and totally froze in his tracks. He just stood there, staring blankly at the screen for a few tense seconds before finally snapping out of it and swiping answer. Hello? The name Grace was sitting right on the tip of his tongue, but remembering those absolutely icy final words she had left him with that day, he swallowed it back, keeping her name to himself. What are you up to? Her voice came through the speaker, cool, leveled, and completely unbothered as always. I actually just got back from grabbing dinner with a patient, Caleb answered, deciding to just play it completely straight. Oh? Is that the same guy I heard on the phone the other day? The one begging to take you out? Grace asked sharply. Yeah, that's him. I shot him down last time, so it was honestly just too hard to say no again this time, Caleb admitted, running a hand through his hair. All right, just get your butt inside and go home. Hold up. Caleb's heart skipped a beat as a weird chill ran down his spine. Wait a second. How did you know I wasn't already inside? He hadn't said a single word about being out on the street, so how the hell did she know? No freaking way. Could she be out here? Caleb had barely taken 5 steps into the courtyard, but he immediately spun on his heel and sprinted back toward the main gates. And bingo. Right there, parked silently by the curb like a predator in the shadows, was Grace's slick car. He slowly lowered the phone from his ear and started walking straight toward her. Grace hopped out of her car in a flash, holding the passenger door wide open. Get in! It's freezing out here! Caleb just stood there, completely frozen. After mulling it over, he finally asked, Did you come all this way just to see me? We might as well head upstairs to talk. Now it was Grace's turn to freeze. Are you sure that's okay? She asked hesitantly. It's totally fine, really. Caleb shook his head with a quiet chuckle. Let's go. Honestly, he fully expected this reunion to be intensely awkward. That was exactly why he had been dreading seeing Grace again. But now that she was actually standing right in front of him, everything just felt so incredibly natural. A massive wave of relief washed over him. After all, he and Grace used to be family. Even without any romantic feelings, their connection ran way deeper than ordinary people's. Hearing his response, a warm smile spread across Grace's face, too. She quickly locked up her car and followed Caleb straight into his apartment building. Along the way, she casually reached out to fix his collar, asking softly, Are you settling in okay here? That simple, tender gesture made Caleb's heart skip a beat. Looking back, she had always been this sweet and considerate. Honestly, a woman as gorgeous and kind-hearted as Grace should have guys lining up around the block. So, How on earth had she spent all these years entirely single? Were her standards seriously just that impossibly high? Yeah, it's pretty great, Caleb replied. The best part is how close it is to work, so I get to sleep in a bit. He flashed an easy smile, totally relaxed. Seeing him so upbeat made a complicated look flash across Grace's eyes, but she hid it so fast Caleb didn't even notice. The two of them headed up the stairs together. But the second they walked through his door, the lights flickered for a split second before completely dying. The entire apartment was plunged into pitch darkness. Caleb instinctively reached out to grab the person next to him, but his hands accidentally wrapped right around Grace's waist. She let out a sudden muffled gasp. "Ah, my bad," he stammered. Grace just giggled softly in the dark. "It's fine. It just tickled a bit." Without missing a beat, she smoothly reached out and grabbed Caleb's hand. Her skin was unbelievably soft, so delicate that Caleb was genuinely terrified he might crush her hand if he squeezed even a little too hard. "Do you happen to have any candles?" she whispered. "Yeah, hold on," Caleb replied, fumbling his way to the TV stand and pulling one out from the drawer. The tiny flame flickered to life, casting a warm, golden glow across the room. "Take a seat," he offered. "I'll go grab you some water." But Grace quickly stopped him. "Don't go to any trouble. I just need to say my piece, and then I'll head out." Reluctantly, Caleb sat back down. "Caleb, I was way too pushy the other day. Matters of the heart take two people, after all. I really should have considered your feelings," she said, her voice dripping with sincerity. The second those words left her mouth, Caleb tensed up like a board. There was no running from this. He took a long, deep breath and slowly exhaled, desperately trying to keep his cool. Putting on his best poker face, he brushed it off. "It's water under the bridge. Let's just drop it." Grace paused, then gave a tiny nod. "Okay, then let's lay all our cards on the table right now, and we'll never have to speak of it again." Caleb honestly didn't know whether to laugh out loud or break down crying. He never imagined that the usually strict and proper Grace would actually pull a fast one on him. Tonight, she was showing him a completely different side of herself. But before Caleb could even process what was happening, Grace dropped an absolute bombshell. "Caleb, I'm going to win your heart." His mind totally short-circuited. He sat there, utterly paralyzed. Wait, what just happened? How did things escalate so fast? Meanwhile, Grace looked calm, cool, and collected, without a single ounce of panic. But the look in her eyes was dead serious. "I've been doing a lot of thinking over the last few days. I know I messed up how I explained things before, and that totally threw you off. Caleb, I want to be with you, because I genuinely like you." A tidal wave of emotion slammed into Caleb. He felt this wild mix of past hurt, sudden thrill, and a million other crazy feelings he couldn't name. For a split second, it felt like his heart was doing absolute gymnastics in his chest. "When I said I promised Mom and Dad I'd take care of you, I was just being clever. I used them as the perfect, bulletproof excuse to stay close to you. I stupidly thought that if I played it that way, things would just magically fall into place, and you would finally be mine. I never expected it to blow up in my face like that. I was such a fool." With those heavy words hanging in the air, Grace stood up, walked right over to Caleb, and gently took his hands in hers. Her fingers were freezing cold, giving away just how absolutely terrified she was. "You probably won't believe me, but from the very first day we met, I never wanted to just be your sister. I worked so incredibly hard to be perfect, all just to get you to notice me. I just wanted you to look at me." Her deep, soulful eyes locked onto Caleb's, never blinking once. She wasn't even trying to hide the raw, burning desire in her gaze anymore. Caleb could only stare blankly back at her, his heart threatening to beat right out of his chest. Grace had pushed herself to pure perfection, all for the single hope that he would finally notice her. Her sheer perfection used to drive him crazy. It made him rebel, made him want to run as far away from her shadow as humanly possible. But damn, what a beautiful mistake it turned out to be. They had almost missed out on each other for an entire lifetime. The two of them just stayed like that, frozen in a heavy, breathless silence. Finally, Caleb snapped out of it. He slowly slipped his hand out of her desperate grip and stood tall. Staring at his back, the sudden burst of hope in Grace's chest popped like a soap bubble, washing away into cold dread. Was this it? Had she totally blown it? She laughed bitterly to herself. feeling a crushing wave of regret, but honestly, not a single drop of anger. If she was going to blame anyone, it was herself for dragging her feet. Because in this world, if you blink and miss your shot with the right person, they're gone forever. Grace Winters. Caleb's voice suddenly cut through the silence. Grace went completely rigid. He had literally never called her by her full name before. It sounded weirdly formal, but at the same time, insanely intimate. Still facing away, staring out into the pitch-black night, he finally spoke. "I'm in. Wait, you're actually letting me pursue you?" Grace stared at him, absolutely floored by the twist. She shot up to her feet, her voice trembling softly as a massive, uncontrollable grin spread across her face. Her eyes practically sparkled with pure, unfiltered joy. This was way too good to be true, and it was happening way too fast. It honestly felt like a fever dream. Throwing all her usual icy composure out the window, she closed the gap, grabbing his shoulders and spinning him around to face her. The room was drowned in shadows. Silver moonlight spilled through the glass, catching half of Caleb's face and making him look painfully gorgeous and untouchable. Sounding like an absolute angel, he smirked and whispered, "I said yes, but I don't give my heart away easily. You'd better work for it." A relaxed, genuine smile completely melted Grace's usually freezing demeanor. For once, the terrifying Ice Queen just looked like a girl in love. Caleb stared back, suddenly realizing that the longer he looked at her right now, the harder he was falling. Out of nowhere, she pulled him into a fierce, suffocating hug, clinging to him like he was a winning lottery ticket. "Caleb, I'm so happy." Seriously, he didn't even try to pull away. He just let her hold him, breathing in her soft, expensive perfume as he let his eyes slide shut. He couldn't deny it, he was happy too. And let it be known, Grace was a woman who didn't just talk the talk. The second he gave her the green light, she went full throttle into pre-girlfriend mode. When she said she was going to pursue him, she meant business. Chauffeur service to and from the hospital? Check. 3 gourmet meals a day? Check. Over-the-top flowers, luxury gifts, and insane dates? Check. She micromanaged every single detail flawlessly. Caleb literally didn't have to lift a finger anymore, and she was constantly throwing crazy little surprises his way. Plus, she was incredibly loud about it. She practically took out a billboard to let the entire world know that Caleb was off the market. She was forcefully scaring off the competition, which totally panicked Liam. He had been crushing on Caleb forever and wanted to play the slow game, but now he was sweating bullets. After getting turned down for coffee like 5 times, Liam finally cracked and decided to just go for broke. The guy actually hijacked the hospital courtyard, set up an insanely cheesy romantic trap, and essentially proposed to Caleb in front of everyone. Caleb was absolutely paralyzed with shock. But not in a good way. He thought it was the absolute cringiest thing ever. It was a total circus, and Liam was dragging Caleb's dignity right through the mud with him. "Dr. Cole, you are quite literally the most incredible man I have ever met. Your dedication, your gentle care, you literally saved my life. Everything I am belongs to you now." Liam poured his heart out, looking like a love-struck puppy. Meanwhile, he totally missed the fact that Caleb looked like he wanted to vomit. Unbelievable. Just another guy who wanted Caleb to be his personal lifelong nursemaid. So, with zero hesitation and zero mercy, Caleb ruthlessly shut him down in front of a massive crowd. "Look, I'm sorry, but I have a girlfriend, and we're literally dating to get married. She treats me like absolute royalty. She spoils me rotten, and frankly, I'm completely in love with her." The hopeful smile on Liam's face shattered into a million pieces, replaced by pure, agonizing defeat. He had waited too long. Somebody had already stolen his prize. Still, refusing to accept reality, he forced a brave face and declared, "That's fine. I can wait for you." Caleb just stared at him like he had 2 heads. "Wait for me? Are you insane? As long as there isn't a ring on your finger, I'm not giving up." Liam flashed a pathetic, desperate smile. "I'm staying right here in your corner." Caleb just rolled his eyes, utterly exhausted. "You do you, man. Waste your own time for all I care." Tossing that over his shoulder, he spun around and stormed out of the hospital without a single backward glance. But the second he pushed through the front doors, he almost collided with Grace, who was practically sprinting toward him. He stopped dead in his tracks. Before he could even blink, Grace lunged forward and wrapped him in a fiercely protective embrace. Shh. It's okay, baby. I've got you, she whispered, her voice surprisingly soft. I'm right here. Caleb honestly didn't know whether to burst out laughing or start crying. I was totally fine in there. Why are you freaking out? But she didn't let go. She just squeezed him tighter and murmured right against his ear, Caleb, listen to me. From today on, you are done taking care of everybody else's problems. I'm the only one who's going to take care of you now. Just me. Got it? Hearing that fierce, unwavering promise, Caleb froze completely. From the very first day he threw on that white coat, he had always been the rock, the caretaker, the guy holding everyone else together. For the first time in his grueling life, someone had finally looked our underdog protagonist in the eye and told him he didn't have to carry the weight of the world alone. Caleb slowly looked up, his gaze locking intensely with Grace's. Are you serious? He asked, his voice trembling just a bit. Can you really take care of me for the rest of my life? Grace gave a firm, solemn nod, showing absolutely zero hesitation. Did you forget? I promised our folks I would always have your back, until the very end. Besides, that's exactly what I've always wanted to do anyway. They just gave me the perfect, rightful excuse to finally claim you. Caleb let those heavy, deeply comforting words sink into his battered heart. Slowly, a genuine, hard-earned smile spread across his face. All right, Grace. As of right now, you are officially my girlfriend. I accept your pursuit. Her face lit up instantly, and she threw her arms around him in a fierce, tight hug. Then please take good care of me, boyfriend, she whispered playfully. You too. But before they could even soak in their hard-won moment, a furious roar shattered the peace. It was Evelyn. Looking pale and pathetic in a crumpled hospital gown, Caleb's crazy ex-wife stumbled out of the building. Right behind her was Ethan, rolling up desperately in his wheelchair. Sister, come back! Ethan panicked, but Evelyn ignored him, shrieking hysterically at the couple. You are not allowed to go to Caleb! You two can't be together! I absolutely forbid it! Grace wasn't having a single second of this nonsense. She instantly shielded Caleb behind her, marched right up to Evelyn, and delivered a brutal, ringing slap right across her face. Smack! Since Evelyn was already weak and seriously ill, that single strike sent her entire body staggering before she collapsed into a pathetic heap on the dirt. Grace, if you're going to hit someone, hit me! Leave my sister alone! Ethan cried out, literally tumbling out of his wheelchair to use his own body as a desperate shield for Evelyn. But Grace couldn't even be bothered to waste another glance on those two losers. With a cold scoff, she grabbed Caleb's hand, ready to leave that toxic trash behind. Just as they turned, Evelyn spat out a venomous, desperate accusation. Caleb, aren't you and your precious sister exactly the same? What right do you have to judge me and Ethan? Caleb froze in his tracks. He slowly turned his head to glare at the wretched siblings huddled on the ground. First of all, Grace and I don't share a single drop of blood, and we didn't even grow up under the same roof, Caleb stated with icy calm. But you know what? Forget it. You are nothing more than my ex-wife. Why on earth am I even explaining myself to you? Your twisted thoughts mean absolutely nothing to me anymore. Stepping up, Grace dropped the ultimate hammer. And Ethan? I already gave you 2 chances. Since you failed to do what you promised me, get ready for my lawyers. Wait for the court summons. With that epic final blow, the absolute power couple got straight into their sleek car and sped off into the distance. Left eating their dust, the 2 shattered siblings sat paralyzed on the pavement. Sister, I really don't want to go to prison. Ethan sobbed like a total baby. But Evelyn didn't even hear him. Staring blankly at the empty road like a complete psychopath, she muttered, Caleb, you are mine. You're still mine. Meanwhile, riding in the car, Caleb finally asked the burning question. Hey, I've been meaning to ask you. Did you and Ethan make some sort of secret deal? Yeah, we did, Grace admitted smoothly. He desperately needed capital to play the stock market, so he used that to promise he'd keep his crazy sister from bothering you ever again. He actually had the guts to ask me for $1 million, Grace revealed with chilling calmness, hiding absolutely nothing. Caleb's eyes blew wide open in sheer shock. Wait, isn't that straight-up extortion? Grace just shook her head. If throwing cash at him meant you finally got some peace, it would have been worth every penny. Unfortunately, he blew it. Caleb sighed deeply and closed his eyes, finally letting go of the past. Forget it. Let's not let those irrelevant people ruin our vibe. They just aren't worth our energy. Hearing this, Grace turned her gaze to her man, a soft warmth in her eyes as she reached out to firmly hold his hand. All right then, she murmured affectionately. Let's finally go home. A relaxed, victorious smirk tugged at the corners of Caleb's lips. Yeah, let's go home.